Chapter 1819. Li Mingshua's sect, Quandao City, on the highest point of the sect's sun-gazing tower, under the dome of the Scattered Stars Hall, 3 people sat in a circle. Above the 33 bloodline clans, there were 6 superior clans, and these 6 clans held all the power in the sect. These 6 clans used the method of rotation, changing every 300 years. Currently, the affairs of the sect were managed by the Shou clan, Bing clan, and Chu clan. In the next 300 years, it would be handed over to the Ling clan, Quan clan, and Gu clan. There were only 3 years left until the next change. Though there was a clan leader above the 6 clans, and he was even from the royal family, he usually didn't care about the sect's affairs. Only when the 6 clans couldn't come to an agreement and couldn't make a decision would he come out to make a decision. The Bing clan leader was wrapped in sackcloth, and only his eyes were exposed. Outside, he wore a luxurious brocade robe, but his body gave off an air of decay. He said in a hoarse voice, "Just now, there's news that Ling Ji released the demonic green demon and sent it outside the sect. I wonder what she's trying to do." The Chu clan leader was handsome and had a gentle temperament. He said, "Perhaps clan leader Ling wants to capture the demonic beast?" The Xiu clan leader, Xiu Ying, had eyes like autumn water, delicate lips and nose, and fair skin. On the surface, she looked like she was only 16 or 17 years old. Xiu Ying was an old rival of Madame Ling, so she naturally wouldn't have anything good to say. She snorted and said, "It's not that easy to capture demonic beasts. Moreover, even if Madame Ling did this, she should at least inform the sect. Now, she didn't even inform us and did it on her own. She's obviously looking down on us." There were countless demonic beasts in the Wanke stellar stream, and some wandered in the cracks in the void. Normally, they wouldn't be interested in Xionglu. However, if there was a creature with a similar bloodline, or if there was a creature that could devour it, then there was a chance that it would be attracted into the realm. If it were a large sect, they would use this to attract some powerful demonic beasts and capture them for their own use. However, sufficient preparations had to be made first, because no one knew the strength of the gods and monsters that were drawn over. If Madame Ling released them now, it was highly likely to bring about unpredictable consequences. The sect master of the Bing clan was not swayed by Xiu Ku's attitude. After all, in another 3 years, it would be Madame Ling and the others who would take over the clan. He did not want to fall out with them at this time, so he said, "Let's send someone to ask them first." The clan master of Chu clan obviously thought so, and said, "All right." Xiu Kuang saw that the 2 of them had different opinions with her, so she didn't say anything more. She just said, "Sect master has gone to the void to hunt the python deity, so he is not in the sect. If anything happens to him, I will report it to him when he returns." On the other hand, Shi Zhou did not understand why the Li Mingshua's sect would value a disciple who had just entered the sect just now. He even suspected that Han Dingyi's identity as an outsider had been exposed. Therefore, he brought one of them back to investigate. With Gao Jianfeng around, there was no need for him to ask. As long as he invaded Han Dingyi's spirit, he would be able to find out what he wanted to know. After Gao Jianfeng finished casting the technique, he said, "Whether it is the one from before or the one in front of us, they were not sent by the Li Mingshua's sect, but Madame Ling alone. However, we do not know what her goal is, but she was ordered to bring fellow Daoist Han back alive." Lu Huan said with certainty, "Fellow Daoist Han must have something that this person wants." Han Dingyi thought for a moment and said, "Then it can only be the bloodline of the dragon." At this moment, Gao Jianfeng's expression suddenly changed. Shi Zhou noticed his expression and said, "Fellow Daoist Gao, what is it?" Gao Jianfeng said in a low voice, "There is a giant green-skinned monster coming in our direction. It is probably here to capture fellow Daoist Han." As he spoke, he took a deep breath. "Its speed is very fast, and it will arrive here in about 100 breaths." Everyone was shocked. It was obvious that this time, it did not come with good intentions, and would not be as easy to deal with as the previous 2 times. Shi Zhou made a prompt decision, "Fellow Daoists, please wait here. With the protection of the formation, there should be no danger." let me go check out this giant monster first. After giving his instructions, he leaped out and quickly found the giant figure that was gradually approaching. From afar, it looked like a mountain had moved over. He pulled himself up and came to a higher place, then pointed with a finger, and a bolt of lightning struck the giant monster, but it seemed to not feel anything, and there was not even a mark on its skin. He frowned, feeling that this was a bit troublesome. From the looks of it, this giant monster had immeasurably hard skin and bones, and it seemed that he could not defeat it alone. The giant green-skinned monster ignored him and went directly towards Hondingi, but it clearly only knew the general location of Hondingi, and did not know where exactly he was. It only circled in place, because in its eyes, there was nothing but seawater around it. Seeing this, Shizhou's heart skipped a beat. He could see that the giant monster had low intelligence, and after thinking for a while, he had an idea. He immediately turned around and returned to the cave, saying to the three people, "This giant monster is very powerful, and it is difficult for me to fight it head-on. This should be Madame Ling's killing move. I am going to open the formation door and let it come in, trap it in the formation, and then we will retreat from here." The three of them naturally did not object, because when they encountered an opponent that they could not defeat, they naturally had to go up and fight. Hondingi was also glad that he just now stayed here, or else the giant green-skinned monster would have caught up to him. Shizhou picked up a formation flag and shook it lightly, releasing the formation door. Seeing an island appear out of nowhere, the giant monster immediately rushed over, but Shizhou shook it again, and the island disappeared again. Shizhou said, "This formation probably can't trap this monster for long, we need to leave quickly." Hondingi said, "Further west from here is the Golden Glory Blood Sect. Although there is no great conflict between them and the Li Ming Blood Sect, there are occasional conflicts, so we can hide there." Shizhou nodded, "Then let's go there first." He shook his hand and released a flying boat, and after everyone boarded it, it turned into a golden light and flew into the distance. As for the formation flags and formation treasures left here, they would naturally collapse after being used up, leaving no traces behind. After flying for half a day, the flying boat finally left the territory of the Li Ming Blood Sect, but the four of them did not think that they were out of danger. After all, they were still in the buffer zone between the two sections. At this time, a golden talisman suddenly came over, and Lu Huan caught it, saying, "Spiritual Master Shi, fellow Luo has arranged everything." Shizhou's eyes lit up, right on time. Previously, he thought that everyone would be too big of a target if they stayed in one place, so he ordered Luo Zhitong to go to another place to build a teleportation altar. This way, even if they encountered danger, they would be able to move to another place in time. Now that he heard that everything was set up, he did not hesitate and immediately found a place to land, and called the other three to build the altar together. Because all the precious materials had been brought from Busu Tian in advance, it was not difficult to do so. All they had to do was pile them up. With everyone's concerted efforts, it took less than half a day to build a 30 feet tall altar. The four of them did not delay, and immediately stood on it. However, at this time, a huge figure appeared in the distance. It was the Green Demon, and it was rapidly approaching. The four of them were also surprised. They did not expect to get rid of the formation so quickly. However, there was no spiritual opportunity in this place, so the power of the formation could not be maximized. Fortunately, they had set it up in time, so they did not have to face such a threat. The Green Demon let out a roar that shook the heavens when it saw Hondingi, and it charged over in a barbaric manner. However, right when they were about to collide, a strand of bright light flashed above the altar, and then the four of them vanished in unison. Qinghuan Palace, Shenyuan Heaven. Zhang Yan opened his eyes. Just now, he felt that there was a change in the world. If there was no accident, the two Eastern Wilderness Xian cultivators had broken through the barrier. Next, he could send the heavenly demons in. Usually, as long as there were enough heavenly demons, they could devour each other and become a genin demon, which was easier than a cultivator's advancement. Just as he was about to do so, he suddenly felt that the world was suddenly blurred, as if it was about to disappear. He immediately focused and firmly stabilized it. He changed his mind. This should be an external force disturbing his senses. Perhaps it was the doing of the person behind him. However, if this person discovered his actions, then the best way would be to find a way to kill the disciples he had sent over, and not do such a thing to alert him. Therefore, either the other party was powerless, or they would interfere regardless of whether he was doing this or not. He was not sure which it was, but if he sent the demons one by one, it would obviously increase the risk of being discovered by this person. After thinking about it, he decided to change his original plan and only send one person. There was no doubt that Sima Quan was the most suitable person here. Thus, with a snap of his fingers, a golden light had already descended to the lower realm. On the land of Kuanshur continent, Sima Quan, as the master of the heavenly palace of mysterious Een, personally sat on top of the largest crack in the ground. Suddenly, he saw a light flying in from outside and hovering in front of him. He knew that it was a message from the upper realm, so he grabbed it and read it. Then, he bowed to the sky and said, "Sima receives the order." During this period of time, he had been capturing heavenly demons in the abyss and refining them. He felt that he was not far from advancing one step further. After some preparation, he threw the golden book out. Seeing that there was a rainbow erected in front of him, he strode in. When he came out from the other side, he was already in a foreign world. However, he realized that there was no spiritual opportunity around him. Fortunately, he had the body of a heavenly demon. Even if there were not enough demons to refine, he could still devour the souls and turn them into resources. According to Zhang Yan's instructions, the first thing he needed to do now was to find a way to find out the supreme combat power in this world. If it was only at the level of Grotto Heaven, then there was no need to increase his strength for the time being. Instead, he would build a welcoming spell altar so that Zhang Yan's doppelganger could descend. If the level of the Almighty in this world was higher than him, then he would first hide and wait until he became a genuine demon before doing anything else. Chapter 1820. Sima Quan first released the demon generals to scout the surroundings. He had served Zhang Yan many times and went to many unfamiliar places. He was very experienced and knew what he should do and how he should do it. After a few days, he had more or less figured out the geography of the surrounding area and the composition of the various forces. After a while, he came to a conclusion. He thought that the people in this world could at most reach the level of Xiang Xiang if there were no special circumstances. This was not without basis. There was no spiritual opportunity here. Even if there were some rare treasures or essences, it would not be enough to push people to the level of mortal transformation. Unless someone could escape from the world, or there were beings from beyond the world, but the number would not be many. It might even be the hidden killing moves of the various sections. If that was the case, he thought that raising his realm and building the altar could be done at the same time. Building the altar was not a simple matter. Not only did he have to gather the cultivators who came here, he also had to use the power of the beings in this world. He couldn't help but look towards a direction. Earlier, he'd already found the traces left behind by Shi Zhou and the others. However, he noticed that they were moving ceaselessly, and it seemed like they'd encountered some sort of trouble. After thinking for a moment, he'd already transformed into a gust of cold wind and flew over with a command in his heart. Heading east from the Blood Sect was a long and narrow mountain range half hidden in the sea. Looking down from the sky, it looked like a dragon's spine above the water's surface. This mountain was actually very wide. Other than a few blood descendants who had the ability to fly, very few people could cross it. After passing this place, it would be the territory of the Dragon Sect. Because it was separated by this Dragon's Back mountain, and because the disciples they accepted were only blood descendants of the dragon race, in addition to the powerful background behind them, this sect was the most neutral among the 6 sections. However, if someone came to bully them, they would not be lenient at all. At this moment, there was a boat coming from the west. Han Dingyi stood at the bow of the boat and looked ahead. He said, "After this is the Dragon Sect." If Lady Ling did not want to cause a war between the 2 sects, she would definitely not chase after us crazily. Shi Zhou looked. Although Dragon's Back Mountain looked very close, it was actually an illusion caused by the mountain's huge size. At this moment, there was still at least a day's journey from there. He thought to himself that there was only one day left, and nothing else should happen. Suddenly, he felt a sense of stagnation and knew that he had exhausted too much of his mana. There was no spiritual opportunity here, so they could only rely on their own mana. He passed the talisman in his hand to Luo Zhitong and said, "Fellow Taoist Luo, I'll leave the rest to you." Luo Zhitong took it and said solemnly, "Don't worry. Just leave it to me." Shi Zhou nodded and took out a pill bottle from his sleeve. He poured out a handful of pills and swallowed them all. Then, he sat down and began to meditate. About half a day later, he recovered slightly, but a strange feeling suddenly arose in his heart. Turning his head to look, he couldn't help but be startled to see a huge green shadow appear on the horizon. It was the green-skinned monster that had caught up to him again. He was shocked. How did they catch up so quickly? Originally, when they encountered this monster, they were at the West of Blood sect. Later on, they relied on the transfer spell altar to come to the east. If this monster wanted to catch up, it would have to travel at least twice the distance. But now, only 3 or 4 days had passed. Unless the monster also had the transfer spell, it was impossible for it to catch up so quickly. He knew that the situation was urgent. If this monster caught up, no one here would be able to escape. Disregarding the fact that he had recovered slightly just now, he immediately stood up and took back the talisman from Luo Zhitong's hand. Activating his mana, the flying boat rushed forward at an even faster speed. Although he couldn't do anything to this monster, as long as they passed Dragon's Back Mountain, this monster would definitely not dare to chase after them. At this moment, a gust of cold wind blew over from the sky. Sima Quan appeared in midair, and he just happened to see this scene. However, he did not immediately help, and instead looked towards the green demon. To his surprise, he discovered that this giant monster did not have any internal organs or bones, and its entire body was completely a piece of green jade. Not only that, this thing didn't even have a soul. It was completely pulled forward by an unknown force. It was extremely like a puppet being manipulated by someone. Mistress Ling released this green demon because she didn't want to attract the real monsters from beyond the heavens. If that happened, things would get out of hand. However, she had always thought that someone in the sect was against her. She only used this action to express her determination to fight to the death. But after all, she hadn't gone crazy, so she still had some leeway. She had long sealed the other part of the green demon's power and didn't completely release it. Sima Quan was most proficient in soul attacks, but this green demon obviously didn't have a soul. What was pushing this thing was a power that he couldn't understand. But not only did he have the heavenly devil body, as an elder of the Netherworld Spring sect, he also had other methods. With a thought, he turned into a chilly wind and circled around the green demon a few times. As the wind blew, the giant monster seemed to have experienced thousands of years in an instant. Its skin was continuously eroded and peeled off. After that, large chunks of its skin fell off. In just a moment, its upper body was broken off and fell into the sea with a loud rumble. Following that, its 2 legs also collapsed. Just when Sima Quan thought that he had taken care of this thing, he made a sound of surprise. He saw that the green demon actually appeared on the surface of the sea again. Moreover, there wasn't a single injury on its body, as if nothing had happened just now. He couldn't help but feel a little surprised. After another look, based on his rich experience, he suddenly had a guess. This thing existed half in the real world, and the other half in the mind. As long as it wasn't attacked from both sides, it would be difficult to kill it. His guess was not wrong. The green demon would usually sink into its own dreams. As long as the dream did not disappear, it wouldn't be destroyed. To make it easier to control, Mistress Ling had sealed the other half of its power. As long as she didn't release it, the monster wouldn't wake up no matter what. However, this way, it had no power to resist in the dream. One had to know that in the crack of the void, there were some monsters that liked to eat dreams, and they would also treat the green demon as food. Therefore, if it stayed outside for too long, it could also meet with an accident. Sima Quan had dealt with many difficult opponents, and he had seen even more strange magical powers. Although this thing was strange, it wasn't like he didn't have a way. The simplest way was to seal it. He only needed to open up a small world here and throw it in. He didn't know when it would come out. Moreover, there were many cracks in the void here, so it wasn't difficult to open them up. However, just as he was about to do so, he realized that something was wrong. Different from the original world, there seemed to be something hidden in the crack of the void here, ready to enter the real world at any time. If he made a move now, it was very likely that it would attract something even more difficult to deal with. Thinking of this, he casually abandoned the crack of the void and prepared to use another method. However, just as he was about to do so, the green demon's body suddenly became blurry, and then it suddenly disappeared. He snorted. It seemed that the other side had discovered the danger, and he had recalled the giant monster. This was good too, it saved him too much effort. With a thought, he landed on the spirit boat. Gao Jianfeng came up and bowed, saying respectfully, "Sect Master." Shi Zhou said, "So it's Sect Master Sima, this junior greets you." Han Dingyi and the others also came up to greet him. Sima Quan said, "This isn't the place to talk, follow me." He directly brought everyone with him and crossed a day's journey, arriving at Dragon's Spine Mountain. Then, he planted a profound pot that he had refined in advance under his feet. After a while, a huge spell formation appeared out of thin air in front of everyone, covering a radius of several miles. Sima Quan said, "Now that there's no one to obstruct us, you've been in the world for so long, you must have found out a lot of things." Shi Zhou said, "Indeed a lot." Then, everyone told him everything they knew in detail. After listening, Sima Quan sorted out the information, then said, "This time, I've come here to build a spell altar. If I succeed, I'll be able to bring Exalted Sovereign Zhang's clone here, then everything will be settled. I need all of you to work together here." Shi Zhou and the others all said solemnly, "We'll definitely do our best." Sima Quan said to Han Dingyi, "If you're here, Madame Ling might not give up, so joining the Dragon's sect is indeed a good choice. You can rely on the power of the Dragon's sect to protect yourself, and we won't be exposed in front of others." Han Dingyi said, "You're right, Sect Master. This junior will go to the Dragon sect later." Sima Quan nodded, then looked at everyone and said, "We want to build the spell altar, so we need to occupy a territory. The place you've chosen isn't suitable, so I've decided to choose another place." Shi Zhou said, "It's all up to you, Sect Master." Sima Quan nodded. Originally, the best way was to steal a sect, but after seeing the green demon and the crack in the void, he felt that it wouldn't be easy to do that, so he might as well open up a territory himself. There were still 2 mystic cultivators here, and their abilities were somewhat similar to the bloodline descendants in this world. He thought that he could push these 2 people to the forefront and conceal their existence. Although the territory on the Xiong continent had long been divided up by the 6 great sects, the foundation of this generation was actually the many bloodline descendants of the great clans. A mere useless territory wouldn't affect their interests too much. Even if they really attacked, as long as they displayed sufficient strength, this generation would know how to choose. In the Qinghuan Palace, after Zhang Yan sent Sima Quan into that world, he sensed the Wei that disturbed his senses attacking wave after wave, and it was getting more and more frequent. He had to fight against it at all times, lest he completely lost this world. However, it was also because of this that he couldn't send more people in. He guessed that perhaps the other party had noticed his actions, so they decided to fight a battle of attrition with him. This way, neither of them could do anything to the other, and it was very likely that the other party's next step would be to use the power of that world to deal with the disciples that were sent into the world. However, if the person behind him continued to fight him like this, he wouldn't be able to do anything else. If there was only Han Dingyi in that world, then he might really lose, but now it was very hard to say. At this moment, he had a feeling that the influence that the person behind him could have on that world was probably limited, or else there would be no need for him to do this. This might be his last struggle. As long as he could successfully send his avatar down, then he would be able to put an end to this. Chapter 1821. Zhang Yan's entanglement with that disturbing force lasted for a month. Because both he and the person behind him were borrowing Bushutian's Weili, this was actually a competition between the two sides in terms of how to use this power. This wasn't a bad thing for him, because the more he fought, the more he would understand this world. If he waited until he could suppress the person behind him with the Weili, then he wouldn't need to do anything to solve all his problems. Just when he thought this would continue, the pressure on him suddenly lessened, and all of the other party's pressure disappeared. This withdrawal was extremely sudden, and there was no warning at all. A thought flashed across his mind. Could it be that the other party's strength was insufficient? Perhaps this was possible. After all, the other party didn't have a Dharma body in this world. Even if he could borrow endless power, the remaining essence energy and consciousness would also be consumed, and it would be impossible for him to resist for too long. But aside from this, there was another possibility, and that was that the other party was deliberately relaxing. If he hurriedly sent cultivators into the lower realm, the person behind him would be able to confirm that he had begun to consciously seek that world and clear the obstacles for him to enter the third level of true yang. He smiled faintly. So what if he was confirmed? At this point, he could already be sure that this person was clearly unable to interfere too much with the situation within the heaven realm. Previously, he had been afraid of such a thing, so he had been very careful. Even when he sent cultivators there, he had tried to disturb the heavens. But now that he had seen through this, there was no need for him to worry so much. He could send more people to that world. Once his clone descended, the other party wouldn't be able to do anything to him. With just a thought, Zhang Chan appeared in front of him out of nowhere. He raised his head and saw Zhang Yan sitting on a chair. He hurriedly bowed and said, "This lowly one greets Master. Does Master have any instructions?" Zhang Yan pointed and a ray of light entered his forehead. "Just do as I say." Zhang Chan immediately understood and hurriedly said, "This lowly one obeys." With a wave of Zhang Yan's sleeve, Zhang Chan's figure blurred, and he was sent to that world. Just as he was doing this, the disturbing power attacked again. It appeared so quickly that it was enough to prove that the other party just now was only testing him. He sneered and used his magic power to stabilize his senses again. Because the endless Weili was released from both sides and collided with each other, the power gathered here was far more astonishing than when the Tai golden bead was used. Moreover, it lasted for a long time, and all the powerful figures inside and outside the lower realm noticed it. In the deserted world, when Deng Zhang felt the shocking power, he even had the urge to hide in the void realm. It was just that ever since he saw that scene that day, he had been waiting for an opportunity. It was not the true human path, but he was not willing to retreat so easily. He was not the only one. At this moment, Bai Wei, Qi Yao and the other two had also sensed the two mighty forces, causing their hearts to be endlessly shaken. They discovered that if they were to stand in front of a person who possessed such mighty force, it would be impossible for them to resist. All of them had thoughts of withdrawing and retreating. However, when they recalled the scene of the future that they had seen, all of them calmed down and silently waited for the time to come. Xiong Lu, Blood Sect. Madame Ling stood in the Ling clan's ancestral residence, watching the green demon's giant body slowly sink into the pool. She also sighed in relief. Earlier, when the Azure Demon was destroyed by Sima Quan, it disappeared for an instant. Although it walked out of the dream again, it still caused her to be extremely fearful. She was afraid that it would attract some kind of monster that was difficult to deal with, so she hurriedly withdrew it. At this moment, she stepped into the air and pressed her hand between the green demon's eyebrows. She wanted to see what kind of enemy it had encountered just now. But when she looked down, she couldn't help but frown. In those scenes, there were no traces of the enemy at all. There was only a gust of foul wind blowing, and the seemingly normal wind actually caused the green demon to collapse just like that. She was unable to identify the enemy at all. The only thing she learned was that Han Dingy did indeed have helpers, and looking at the direction, they should be heading towards the dragon sect. She thought for a moment. If it was 300 years ago and Han Dingy was in the dragon sect, she would really have to give up. But the situation now was different, and she might have a chance. She called out and said, "Ling Ming." After a while, Elder Ming walked out and said, "Madam, what can I do for you?" Madam Ling said, "Send my heavenly origin blood crystal to sect leader Zhou of the dragon sect." You should know what to say. Elder Ming was stunned, then said worriedly, "Madam, this item is so precious. What if sect leader Zhou refuses to accept it?" Madam Ling interrupted him and said, "Without that person's bloodline, my daughter can't be saved. Then what's the use of this item?" She sneered, "Moreover, it's not that easy to take my things. Just do as I say." Elder Ming didn't dare to say anything more. He bowed and left. After saying goodbye to Sima Quan and the others, Han Dingyi set off for the dragon sect. The dragon sect's territory was different from other places. There was a half-dragon, half-turtle monster hidden under the sea. Its name was Falling Breath. Anyone who wasn't a descendant of a dragon could become its food. If he had landed here instead of the mythical blood sect's territory, then he might have been swallowed by the monster as long as he didn't consume the flood dragon essence blood immediately. Han Dingyi spent a few days to find the mountain gate and said that he wanted to join the sect. He also handed over the inherited vein blood plate. However, the dragon sect was different from the mythical blood sect's strict rules. They didn't care about these things at all. The person who greeted him didn't even look at him and directly gave him a token, which meant that he was a disciple of the sect. Han Dingyi didn't expect it to be so easy. He originally wanted to enter the mountain gate to take a look, but the person impatiently sent him away. He noticed that he wasn't the only one who was treated like this, so he didn't pester him. After asking around, he found out that the reason he encountered such a situation was because the dragon sect had long been controlled by a few clans. Relying on the relationship of marriage, they joined forces to divide all the benefits. It was impossible for descendants of foreign blood to squeeze in. However, it was only a branch sect after all. There was still the main sect above it, so it couldn't be too brazen and exclude all descendants of dragon blood. Thus, another rule was set. As long as you were a person with dragon blood, no matter who you were, you could seek shelter under the sect, and the sect wouldn't care what you did. In this way, there would be an explanation to everyone. After understanding this, Han Dingyi understood that although the dragon sect was loose, it was 100 times more difficult to sneak into the upper echelons than it was to enter the mythical blood sect. It was the same even if he was enlightened. As long as he wasn't from one of those clans or had any connections, he wouldn't have any chance. However, here, he wasn't afraid of being hunted by Madame Ling, so he decided to stay. Several days later, he built a pill pavilion on a nearby deserted island. He consigned the pills he refined to the outside world. While avoiding danger, he slowly waited for an opportunity. He understood that if the dragon sect needed the pills he refined, then the dragon sect would definitely need them as well. This would give him a chance to come into contact with them. In the past month or so, he had gradually gained some fame here. Just as he expected, someone from the dragon sect came to find him and said that a sect elder had summoned him for questioning. Although he wasn't valued now, he was undoubtedly a disciple of the dragon sect. Since the sect had summoned him, there was no reason for him to refuse. Moreover, this was also his own goal, so he didn't decline and immediately agreed. However, to prevent any accidents, he found an opportunity to secretly send out a letter before he left. On the other side, Sima Quan took Shi Zhou and the others and spent more than 30 days choosing an island, preparing to build an altar there. This place was completely above the fire vent. After changing it with his mana, the chi of earth fire was continuously drawn up from below, becoming a part of maintaining the operation of the formation. However, this was far from enough. He buried a jade stone that was covered with green burnt patterns. This was the heart of a demonic ghost that grew underground in Busu Tian. As long as a little spiritual vigor was infused into it, endless vitality would emerge. It could even gather the water vapor of the surrounding rocks and borrow its weight to come back to life. Now that it was used here, it could avoid the predicament of insufficient spiritual vigor. However, this was still not enough. Sima Quan gathered everyone and said, I will go to the void crack once and catch a few monsters back. I will leave this place to you guys. Zhou said. Sect leader Sima, fellow Han once said that the void crack is filled with danger and countless monsters. Is it too dangerous to go there this time? Sima Quan said, this is the only way to build the altar faster. If I feel that something is wrong, I will naturally retreat. Don't worry, everyone. He left a doppelganger here. The impure spiritual vigor he brought this time was enough. Even if this demonic body dissipated, it could be revived. In reality, he also left many doppelgangers in Busu Tian and the Void Primal Sea. Even if he died here, he would not completely disappear. At most, he would lose everything he came into contact with here. Seeing that he had made up his mind, Zhou solemnly cupped his hands and said, I will look after this place later. After Sima Quan gave his instructions, he circulated his mana and instantly escaped into the void crack. When he arrived here, he found that it was somewhat similar to the Void Primal Sea. However, there were many indescribable differences. This was because he did not know how many monsters were hidden here, and many of them had inexplicable abilities. He did not dare to act carelessly. When he encountered opponents that he could not see through, he would avoid them and only pick those that were easy to deal with. Fortunately, his luck was good this time. All the monsters that he encountered could not resist the invasion of his spirit and were easily subdued by him. He quit while he was ahead. After capturing the 5 monsters, he retreated from there. Seeing that he had returned, everyone went forward to greet him. Zhou cupped his hands and said, Sect leader Sima, you have returned at the right time. We have something to report. Sima Quan said in a deep voice, what is it? Zhou said, we had an agreement with fellow Daoist Han to send a letter every 3 days. However, ever since fellow Daoist Han's last letter arrived, we haven't received any news from him for 5 days. That's why we suspect that something has happened to the Dragon Sect. Chapter 1822. When Sima Quan heard about this, he decided to investigate. He had sent many demons to the Dragon Sect and other places, but once they crossed over Dragon's Back Mountain, they would mysteriously disappear. He suspected that this was related to the monsters in the Dragon Sect's territory. In order not to attract the Dragon Sect's attention, he used demonic chi to infect them. Recently, he had indeed controlled many people. As for why he didn't directly put a demon on Han Dingy's body, it was because once a demon entered a cultivator's body, the person would have no secrets to speak of. Moreover, Han Dingy himself was also against this, so he didn't do it. Under his orders, these people went everywhere to investigate this matter, and soon, they sent back news. Han Dingy was politely invited by the people of the Dragon Sect, but they didn't see him again after that. Sima Quan found that this was the same as the last letter that Han Dingy sent. On the surface, there was nothing wrong, but based on past experience, he felt that something was wrong here. He was the one who agreed to let Han Dingy enter the Dragon Sect to investigate. Moreover, Han Dingy wasn't an ordinary disciple, so it was reasonable for him to find out about his current situation. He pondered for a moment, then tossed out all the monsters that he had captured, and said to Zhou and the others, I need to personally investigate this matter. Right now, the matter of the spell altar is the most urgent. You guys can start building it. I've infected the minds of these monsters, and they can be controlled by you guys. If there are external enemies attacking, you can order them to go forward and defend against them. After giving the instructions, he turned into a gust of cold wind and flew away. In the Dragon Sect, Han Dingy's current situation wasn't as bad as he imagined, but it wasn't much better either. As soon as he entered the Dragon Sect, he was brought to a bamboo building. Then, a deacon of the sect came to ask him to hand over the method of alchemy. This was what he had expected. As long as he could enter the sect, paying this price was actually very worth it. However, in the next few days, no one paid attention to him. He tried to go out, but was stopped by the guards outside. Because he couldn't figure out the other party's intentions, he didn't act rashly. 5 days later, a middle-aged man found him and said with a deep voice, Han Dingy, we've already investigated. You were originally a disciple of the mythic blood sect, but you betrayed your sect and fled to our dragon sect. Not long ago, the mythic blood sect sent a letter asking about this, so we could only send you back. Han Dingyi didn't think that the Li Ming blood sect would be able to extend their reach to the dragon sect. However, he was still very calm at this moment. He said, "Didn't your sect say that all descendants of the dragon race can be admitted into your sect regardless of their background?" The middle-aged man was silent for a moment, then said, "Even so, you first entered his sect, so you are already a disciple of his sect. My sect cannot ruin the friendship between our two sects because of you." Han Dingyi knew that this was not the reason why the other party wanted to send him back. The dragon sect and the mythic blood sect never had any friendship to speak of. Instead, the mythic blood sect had always looked down on other descendants of deities and monsters because of their bloodline. Moreover, with the dragon sect as their backing, they never had to give face to other sections. This was just an excuse. He thought quickly. At this moment, he could only use benefits to tempt the other party. He said, "I gave the sect a type of secret pill before, but I still have several types of secret pills that can improve bloodline. I'm willing to give them all to you now. I wonder if your sect is willing to accept them." The middle-aged man glanced at him and shook his head. "Don't think too much about that. It's useless even if you give me all the secret pills." Han Dingyi's heart sank. It seemed that the Ling clan or the mythic blood sect had offered him something he couldn't refuse. The middle-aged man said, "I'll send you to Dragon Spine Mountain later. Someone from the mythic blood sect will come and bring you back." As he spoke, he took out a small bottle and poured out a pill. He said, "Eat this." Han Dingyi asked, "What is this?" The middle-aged man didn't say anything. Han Dingyi thought for a moment. At this moment, he had no choice but to accept it. If he disobeyed, he might suffer. He wasn't a true blood descendant, so the methods used against the people here might not work on him. As long as he could escape, there would always be a solution. So, he picked up the pill and swallowed it. The middle-aged man stared at him carefully. Seeing that he wasn't faking it, he nodded and said, "You're a man who knows how to adapt to circumstances. With your bloodline and ability, if it weren't for certain reasons, I would really want to keep you here. If you want to blame something, blame it on your bad luck." Han Dingyi looked at him and said, "Your sect has made a wrong choice." The middle-aged man furrowed his brows as he felt an inexplicable palpitation in his heart, as if he had really done something wrong. He then shook his head and laughed inwardly. What could a mere awakened blood descendant do? Speaking of which, his bloodline was indeed a little unique. However, others might not understand, but they could see that he had nothing to do with the true dragon. At most, he was just a relative collateral descendant. If he really had the ability, he wouldn't have ended up here. The main sect would have found him with the blood plate long ago. He took a step to the side, pointed outside, and said coldly, "Please." Above the vast sea, Zhang Chan's figure emerged from the void. He looked around curiously and tried to take a breath. However, he found that there wasn't even a bit of spiritual vigor here. However, he didn't care much. He was transformed from the blood-thread golden worm, so he was born with supernatural power. As long as he absorbed the essence and blood of some people in the upper state, he could also replenish himself. He took out a talisman from his sleeve. There was a chi-seeking talisman here, which could be used to find the cultivator closest to him. He held the talisman and chanted a few incantations. Then, he threw the talisman out. The talisman suddenly turned into a light and flew in one direction. He chuckled, and his body turned into a bloody light as he followed. After half a day, he found that there was a huge mountain ridge on the sea in front of him. However, in his eyes, this mountain wasn't naturally formed, but evolved from some giant creature. At this moment, he glanced around and found that the talisman had disappeared. He couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. He carefully sensed and found that there was an obscure spiritual vigor hidden in the sky. With a thought, he moved upwards and leaped to that place. He saw a Taoist surrounded by Yin Qi standing there. The Taoist laughed and said, looks like my luck is good. I've just entered the realm and I've already found fellow Taoist Sima. Sima Quan cupped his hands and said, "Greetings, fellow Taoist Zhang." Zhang Chan cupped his hands and said, "Greetings, greetings." He looked around curiously, "What are you doing here, fellow Taoist Sima?" Sima Quan said, "I'm here to rescue a fellow Taoist. I'll tell you the details when I return." Just as they were speaking, they saw a ship coming out of the thick fog in the distance. It docked at Dragon's Back Mountain, and a group of people came out on their own. Sima Quan gestured downwards and said, "That fellow Taoist is over there." At this moment, an elder was already waiting on Dragon's Back Mountain. When he saw the dragon sect escorting Han Dingy up, he finally heaved a sigh of relief. He put on a smile and went up to greet them. He bowed to the people from the dragon sect and said, "Thank you for returning my disciple." The middle-aged man's attitude was rather cold. He said, "Where is the item?" The elder took out a palm-sized wooden box made of golden silk and said, "Sect elder, you can check it." The middle-aged man took it and opened it. His face was instantly dyed with a layer of bright red light. He couldn't help but squint his eyes, then immediately closed them again. He said, "The item is not bad. Then, we don't owe each other anything." The elder chuckled and said, "Of course." He turned his head and looked at Han Dingy. He said indifferently, "Han Dingy, do you think you can escape from the control of the sect?" Han Dingy sighed and said, "Actually, my departure is a good thing for your esteemed sect." "Why must your esteemed sect capture me?" The elder frowned. Han Dingy's words made him feel a little uncomfortable. It was as if he had done something wrong. Originally, he wanted to ask who helped Han Dingy escape from the sect. However, the people from the dragon sect were here, so it wasn't convenient for him to say too much. He could only slowly interrogate him when he returned. He snorted and waved his hand. He said, "Tie him up and take him away." Immediately, two people came up to grab Han Dingy and put thin and long golden chains on his body. However, at this moment, everyone heard a buzzing sound. At first, it was extremely soft, but very quickly, it became louder and louder. The people who heard it were extremely irritated. Everyone looked towards the source of the sound and saw a crimson mist floating over. The middle-aged man from the dragon sect hadn't left yet. His eyesight was far better than others. When he focused his eyes, he discovered to his shock that the red mist was actually formed by countless blood-colored insects. However, these insects were too small, so ordinary people couldn't detect them. He had seen similar things in the crack in space. Almost everyone who bumped into it didn't have a good ending. Without the slightest hesitation, he elongated his body. Horns grew on his head, and gills grew on them. His hands and feet turned into fins, and scales covered his entire body. He actually turned into a creature that was half fish and half dragon in an instant. Then, he rose a cloud and dived into the seawater below. As long as he reached the dragon sect's territory, there would naturally be monsters that would block the enemies for him. There was no need for him to come out and risk his life. However, just now, he felt a gust of chilly wind blowing past him. He suddenly felt dizzy, and then his originally full body shriveled up. The scales also fell off. When he fell into the sea, he had already lost all signs of life. His thick fish dragon-like skeleton was only covered with a layer of shriveled skin and flesh. When the elder saw this, his expression couldn't help but change drastically. He grabbed Han Dingy's body, and when the crimson mist came up, the two of them broke apart like fragile glass. Then, all the broken pieces disappeared together. Aside from the two of them, everyone that remained on the mountain ridge, be it the disciples of the Dragon sect or the Blood Radiant sect, was swept by the mist in just a short period of time. After that, all of their flesh and bones were completely devoured by those tiny insects, leaving not even a single bit of residue behind. The mist in the sky dispersed, and Zhang Chan and Sima Quan both appeared. Zhang Chan said, "That's strange. Where did that Han brat go?" Sima Quan said in a deep voice, "That might be a bloodline secret technique of this world. When it was activated, there was no warning at all. I suspect that Han Dingyi was already hit by it. Otherwise, that person definitely wouldn't have been able to move him away so easily. Now, it seems that he must have been brought back to the blood sect. Zhang Chan chuckled and said, then go there and bring him back. Sima Quan said, right now, the construction of the spell altar is the most important thing. If we start a war with the blood sect right now, I'm afraid we'll miss the important matter. Zhang Chan didn't care at all. He said, it's fine. Master has already made arrangements. In a while, he will naturally send more people here. We'll have to fight these natives sooner or later. Sima Quan thought for a moment and said, if that's the case, leave this matter to me. Fellow Daoist, you can help me take care of that spell altar first. After he finished speaking, his figure flashed, and he already turned into a chilly wind, fleeing in the direction of the blood sect. Chapter 1823. After Zhang Chan separated from Sima Quan, he followed the direction the latter pointed out and quickly found the place where Shi Zhou and the others were staying. Seeing that there was a formation protecting the place, he announced his name outside. Whether it was Shi Zhou or Gao Jianfeng, they had all heard of his name and hurriedly welcomed him in. Zhang Chan went in to take a look and saw that there were 5 monsters moving mountains and stones under the control of Shi Zhou and the others, piling up the altar. He chuckled and said, this saves us energy. It was not that these monsters could build altars very quickly, but the key was that they did not need to use up their own mana. There was no spiritual opportunity here. Even if they had pills and other items to replenish themselves, they would have less to use. Therefore, it was better not to do anything. What they needed to do was to ensure the safety of this place. If there was an attack from outside, they would have enough mana to deal with it. After Zhang Chan had arrived, he had only exchanged a few words with Sima Quan. He was still unclear about the specific situation in this world, so he grabbed Shi Zhou and the others and asked them a lot of questions with great interest. However, seeing that there was nothing more to say, he let them go. Just as he was about to meditate and adjust his breathing, he suddenly saw a giant red butterfly circling around the formation outside. There was a long tail feather attached to its wings, and it looked exceptionally gorgeous. He made a sound of surprise and asked, do you know what this is? Shi Zhou and the others looked over and were confused. They said, what is Jinren Chan talking about? The 2 Eastern Baron mystic cultivators did not see anything either. However, they could feel that the atmosphere around them was different just now. Zhang Chan was slightly surprised, but immediately reacted. Perhaps he was the only one in this place who could see this thing. Whether it was because his skill was the highest, or because he was born as a golden worm, he still did not know. But since he had come to the front of the formation and saw that there were signs of an invasion, he naturally could not remain indifferent. He moved and released his Dharma form. In an instant, a ferocious golden worm with bloodlines on its back appeared in midair. At the same time, Sima Quan was rushing toward the Li Ming blood sect. Therefore, he might not be able to completely avoid conflict with this sect this time, so he secretly evaluated this generation's battle strength. According to what he knew, there were 6 great families in this sect, and they were all descendants of gods and monsters. If every one of them reached the Grotto Heaven realm, their strength would be astonishing. Of course, the specifics couldn't be equated with the cultivators of the 9 continents, because even if their level was similar, it didn't mean that their strength was the same. Even among cultivators, even if their cultivation levels were similar, the difference between them could be like heaven and earth when they fought. The simplest comparison would be to compare the Xian cultivators of the mountain and sea realm. Once they reached the mystic enlightenment realm, they would be on the same level as celestial paradise cultivators. However, the truth was that these Xian cultivators were not as powerful as the celestial paradise cultivators, who could easily destroy mountains and destroy continents. In fact, cultivators who had cultivated Yuanying Dharma bodies could easily compete with them. He wasn't familiar with the secret techniques of the bloodline, but from the abilities he had displayed before, he could tell that this generation had many strange techniques. Therefore, until he actually fought them, it was hard to say what the result would be. However, he didn't need to fight them head-on. The strength of the heavenly demon was that it was difficult to defend against. If the opponent didn't have a way to deal with him, then he could silently exterminate them. It wasn't impossible for one person to destroy an entire sect. Because he was flying invisibly, no living beings could detect his whereabouts. Soon, he arrived at the place where the Li Ming blood sect usually came and went. However, this sect was built inside the belly of a god and monster, so he deduced that it was actually in a realm similar to a small world. He didn't plan to attack, but rather, he planned to possess a disciple. As long as they entered the sect, they would naturally be able to bring him in. Because there were many disciples in such a large sect, and most of them came from large clans, there was an endless stream of people coming and going every day. He didn't wait for long before a few people dressed in luxurious clothes arrived on a large ship. They pointed at the surroundings along the way. His mind immediately shook, and he leaned over the body of a servant. No one noticed this at all. The ship traveled for a while longer, and the originally undulating waves suddenly calmed down. It was as if they had arrived at the surface of a mirror-like lake. Suddenly, the ship sank, but none of the people on the ship panicked, as if they were already used to it. In the next instant, they appeared in a huge city that was brightly lit. The voices on the ship rang out again. Sima Quan knew that he had already arrived at the Li Ming blood sect. Due to Han Dingyi, his understanding of this sect could be said to be the greatest among the 6 sections. However, the demons that he had previously sent to this place had all disappeared. He understood that the other party should also have some powerful methods, so he did not underestimate them. After sensing for a while, he found that Han Dingyi's chi activity had indeed appeared here, but it quickly disappeared somewhere. He changed his mind. According to Han Dingyi, there were 4 paths: hindrance, transmission, Ren, and complete. The Ling clan was one of the 6 upper clans, so it was very likely that they were in the Ren and complete paths. Han Dingyi might also have been brought there. If he wanted to enter and exit this place, he would need to have a talisman in hand. This was not a difficult task for him. There must be a connection between the 4 paths, and it was impossible for them to be completely severed. As long as he found the person who connected them, he could go to any one of them. He stood in a place and carefully sensed. Not long after, he found several places where the spatial turbulence was more intense. He searched according to these places, and soon found a suitable person. Using its power, he easily entered the transmission path. He also didn't find Han Dingyi here. He could only confirm that he had indeed been here, so he used the same method to go to the Ren path. When he arrived here, he finally found the location of Han Dingyi's chi activity. He immediately searched in that direction. In the end, he came to the belly of a mountain. These physical things did not hinder him at all. He leaped and instantly went down more than 1,000 feet. At this time, he saw an empty space. He turned inside and found the location of the chi activity. There was a huge monster hidden here. It was squatting there with its hands hugging its knees, as if it was sleeping soundly. However, Sima Quan could tell that this monster was similar to the Green Goblin. Although it seemed to be alive, its body was an inanimate object, and Han Dingyi was currently inside its body. However, he should be in a void space that the monster had opened up. With his power, it would not be difficult for him to break in. However, doing so would very likely cause the spatial space to collapse. If that was the case, it would be impossible to save him unless he could find the right way to enter. He thought about it for a while. Looking at the situation, the other party did not have the intention to deal with Han Dingyi immediately. The easiest way was to wait here. As long as the other party brought him out, it would not be difficult to save him. However, he would not sit here and wait for nothing. Since he was here, he might as well investigate the background of this sect. Thinking of this, he left a doppelganger here and sneaked into the Quan Dao. At this moment, on the heavenly Guanyang Tower of the Li Mingxue sect, the heads of the 6 upper families gathered together. Madame Ling was rather impatient. She had finally captured Han Dingyi and was about to implant her daughter's bloodline. However, at this time, the sect said that they were looking for her for something important. She could only temporarily detain Han Dingy and rush over. Seeing that the three clan heads did not speak for a long time, she could not help but say coldly, "What exactly is it that called us here? Can't the three of you make decisions in the sect?" The sect master of the Bing clan glanced at her and discussed with the other two for a while. Then, he said, "I originally wanted to wait for sect master's reply. But since sect master Ling is impatient, let's make this matter clear first. Today, I invited all of you here because of the decree from distant Star Upper Palace." Madame Ling's expression froze when she heard this. Even the clan heads of the Quan clan and the Gu clan had strange expressions. The continent of Xiong was not completely separated from the other worlds of 1K stellar stream. They also had dealings with each other. For example, the distant Star Upper Palace was a great alliance established by dozens of big and small worlds. Nominally, it was a level higher than the continent of Xiong. In the 9 continents, it was like the relationship between the upper and lower sections. However, the boundary here was not very clear, because the distant Star Upper Palace did not have the power to control the sects in the various worlds and would not intervene in the specific affairs. Because the continent of Xiong was relatively strong, the 6 clan heads were all elders of the distant Star Palace and had a certain amount of power in the palace. However, every time the decree came, they had to respond. If it was not handled well, the interests of each clan could be damaged. But overall, the existence of this palace had more advantages than disadvantages. At least the sects did not have to fight against the various powerful monsters in the void alone, and they could communicate with each other. The clan head of the Quan clan said, "What did the decree say?" The clan head of the Bing clan said in a low voice, "The decree said that there is a void demon outside the worlds that is about to invade the world, and we are to be careful and guard the crack in the void. If there is an enemy coming, we are to try our best to destroy them. If we cannot handle it, we can ask the upper palace for help." Madame Ling sneered and said, "This is just an excuse to intervene in the affairs of the various sections. There is no void demon." The clan head of the Chu clan shook his head and said, "Clan head Ling, I am afraid you are wrong. The upper palace is taking this matter very seriously. When we summoned you, we have already sent 2 decrees. Including the one just now, there are already 3 decrees." Madame Ling also felt that things were not as simple as she thought. She frowned and said, "What is the background of the void demon?" The clan head of the Bing clan shook his head and said, "The upper palace cannot explain it clearly. It only said that if the void demon enters the world, all the worlds will be destroyed. It is not something we can resist. Fortunately, it is blocked by the heaven and earth. If there is no one in the world to guide it, it cannot invade the 1K star stream." The clan head of the Chu clan raised his hand and bowed to everyone, saying, "This is not a small matter. Now that the clan head has not returned, we can only deal with this matter first. I hope that the clan heads of the various sects will not take this lightly. When you go back, please send more people to investigate the abnormalities everywhere. Whether it is the monsters that leaked out from the crack in the void or the people from the other world, we must investigate them clearly. If the origin is unknown, we would rather exterminate them to eliminate this hidden danger." At this moment, Madame Ling suddenly remembered that the sinister wind that easily crushed the green demon was not found out who did it. It was very strange. She hesitated for a moment and did not say it in the end. To her, the most important thing now was to change the bloodline of her daughter. Everything else could be put aside first. Chapter 1824. Sima Quan looked at the heavenly tower that was suspended in the sky. Even if there was no spirit chi in this place, he could still feel the existence of several tyrannical forces above. Inadvertently, they could cause the surrounding void to distort slightly. Just now, he had found out that the people up there should be the heads of the 6 upper families. Just now, they had suddenly gathered in one place and seemed to be discussing something important. He had a faint premonition that the matter they were discussing might be related to his side. He turned to look at the patterns drawn with blood on the heavenly observation tower's walls. Even though they looked gorgeous and eye-catching, their origins were not simple. There were also countless shadows of gods and monsters circling around them. He tried to release a bit of his chi dynamic, and the gods and monsters immediately showed signs of turning illusory into reality. He immediately realized that something was wrong and immediately retracted his chi dynamic. Without a target, the gods and monsters slowly retreated. He immediately knew that this place was heavily guarded. Even if he went up to investigate, it was very likely that he would be discovered. However, he did not need to do that. No matter what, as long as these people did not personally take action, they would definitely leave it to their subordinates. Then, it would not be difficult to find out what they were discussing through these people. At this time, he saw the door of the heavenly observation tower open, and a few rays of light flew down in different directions. He identified them briefly and chased after one of them. After Mistress Ling came down from the heavenly sunlight tower, she first returned to the clan and instructed the clansmen to be careful of outsiders. Anyone who came from the outside world was to be eliminated. After giving instructions in a hurry, she brought an elder and a few servants to the place where Han Dingy was imprisoned. However, she did not realize that there was a shapeless cold wind following behind her. Actually, the reason why the Li Ming blood sect was able to silently kill the invading demons was mostly due to Madame Ling's arrangements. There were many demons in the void that could invade one's mind through dreams. For example, the source of Madame Ling's bloodline, Qing Nu, was one such example. Because of this, the people in the clan were very good at defending against soul and mind attacks. If it was in the past, Madame Ling would definitely have noticed that something was wrong. However, at this moment, she was not as vigilant as usual because she had something on her mind. Not long after, the group of people arrived at the cave that Sima Quan had found earlier. Madame Ling came to the giant monster and said to Daoran, "Let him out." The old man bowed and came before the giant monster's knee. He slapped it 3 times and said, come on, wake up." Suddenly, the giant monster's closed eyes opened. It turned around and stared at Ming Lao for a while, as if trying to identify him. After a while, the sound of rolling thunder came from its chest and a hole appeared in the air. Han Dingy's entire body was moved out from the hole, but he looked weak. As soon as he came out, he staggered and almost lost his footing. Ever since he was captured, he had been fed a pill that suppressed his bloodline. Although it had limited effects on him, he wouldn't be able to escape with the strength of a mystic light realm, so he didn't do anything rash. He knew that the other party had taken great pains to capture him, and it was definitely not for the sake of taking his life. Thus, he wasn't too worried at the moment. Sima Quan stood quietly to the side, but no one, including Madame Ling, could see him. As long as he didn't actively possess a member of the Ling family, no one would be able to discover his existence. Madame Ling gestured, and Ming Lao walked up and said, "Han Dingy, listen carefully. Our Ling family has already stopped your betrayal, and we can let it go for now. However, our Ling family will not work for a disciple like you for free, so we need to borrow your bloodline. I hope you can be tactful and cooperate." Han Dingy finally understood why they had tried so hard to find him. He said in realization, "So this is why you captured me." On the Xiong continent, taking someone else's bloodline was actually a taboo. However, this was only between large bloodline families. For normal people, it was just taking it, and no one would help you. Ming Daoran said, "For someone like you who has no background, even if you have a superior bloodline, it will only be wasted. Only in the hands of a large family like our Ling family will it be of some use just now." Sima Quan, who was at the side, laughed coldly when he heard this. Han Dingy couldn't be bothered to argue with him. He looked up at Madame Ling and said, "There's something I don't understand. The bloodline of the Ling family is also the bloodline of the gods and monsters, and it doesn't seem to be much worse than the bloodline of the dragon species. We also have all kinds of secrets. Why do you have to take my bloodline?" Ming Lao scolded, "You don't need to know the reason behind this. If you are willing to hand over the bloodline, we can still allow you to live a carefree life if you are lucky enough to survive this time." This was, in fact, an empty promise. If a bloodkin's bloodline was stolen, there was almost no chance of survival. However, it was best for the Blood Kin King to cooperate with the ceremony. Only then would it go smoothly. Otherwise, this condition would not even be promised to him. The most troublesome thing here was that Han Dingy hadn't awakened for the second time. However, if Madame Ling was willing to pay the price, it wouldn't be a problem. Han Dingy said, "What if I'm not willing?" Ming Lao snorted and said, "If you're not willing, I'll just take it myself. At most, it'll take a little more effort, and you definitely won't be able to keep your life. You should understand the importance of this." Han Dingy lowered his head. Ming Lao looked at him and sneered in his heart. In his opinion, Han Dingy had no other choice and would soon give in. However, when he thought about it, he was a descendant of the dragon species who came from nowhere and had no backing. What else could he do but obediently obey? Han Dingy said softly, "Let me think about it for a few days." He knew that someone would definitely come to save him, so he made up his mind to delay for as long as he could. Ming Lao frowned and looked at Madame Ling. The latter said coldly, "Let him have 1 day." Although she couldn't wait to take Han Dingy's bloodline, it would save a lot of trouble if he could figure it out on his own. Daoran nodded and waved his hand, sending Han Dingy back into the giant monster's body. After what happened last time, he wouldn't have the slightest chance to escape. Madame Ling said, "You stay here and guard him." Daoran said, "Don't worry, madam. I won't leave you even half a step." Seeing Madame Ling leave, Sima Quan stood in front of Ming Lao and pointed at the primal aperture between his eyebrows. In an instant, an invisible Yin Qi rushed in. Although Madame Ling could kill demons, she couldn't resist Sima Quan, a skyscraping demon. In a trance, the old man felt that a day had passed. Madame Ling appeared in front of him again and asked him to find the person again. He said yes respectfully and patted the giant monster 3 times like last time. After a short while, the person was sent out again. Han Dingy saw that Ming Lao's expression was strange, as if he was in a daze. He reacted quickly and immediately guessed that someone might be coming to save him. He couldn't help but look around. At this moment, he heard a voice in his ear, "Don't look too much, I'm already here." Hearing this, he couldn't help but say happily, "Leader Sima." Sima Quan said, "Madame Ling is no longer here. Go out now and don't look back. I'll take care of everything for you." Han Dingy composed himself and agreed. With a thought, he immediately turned into ethereal mist and passed through the belly of the mountain. As soon as he arrived outside, he saw many Ling clan's disciples patrolling the area. However, these people ignored him. He immediately knew what was going on and immediately flew out on the mysterious light. This was Rendao, so he didn't know the way. However, with Sima Quan's voice in his ear, it didn't take long for him to reach the exit. Just now, he landed and saw a small boat floating over from afar. The person driving the boat had a dull expression. He was about to step forward when he suddenly realized that Sima Quan was standing beside him. He quickly bowed, "Leader Sima." Sima Quan said, "You can take this boat out of here. Later, follow a demon and you'll be able to return to the encampment." Han Dingy hesitated for a while and said, "Leader Sima, the blood sect seems to be able to predict my location. If I return, I might implicate my fellow Taoists." Sima Quan said, "You don't have to worry about that. If there's an enemy, we'll deal with it." Han Dingy said yes, cupped his hands, and boarded the small boat. When he looked back, he realized that Sima Quan had already disappeared. He guessed that Sima Quan probably had something else to do here. He thought back to what he had experienced in the past few days and thought, no wonder grandfather said that cultivation is the foundation for us Taoists just now. If I, Leader Sima, can come and go as I please, why would I implicate my fellow Taoists? He secretly made up his mind that if he could return this time, he would definitely cultivate with all his might. One day, he would become a person who could control heaven and earth and not be manipulated by others. On the surface of the sea, Zhang Chan was currently looking at his palm. There was a red butterfly floating lightly there. He was very interested. Just now, when he revealed his Dharma form, this thing had already shown its willingness to submit. After connecting with his consciousness, he found out that this thing had escaped from the crack in the void and was attracted here because of him. In the records of deities and demons left behind by Han Dingy, there were also such records. Some stronger deities and demons would gather around them because this red butterfly could feel a bloodline from him that could improve itself. However, due to its lack of strength, it was unable to fuse and devour it, so it chose to submit. Zhang Quan couldn't help but ponder, if that's the case, before more people arrive, I can make use of these deities and demons hiding in the void to serve me. But after thinking about it again, he felt that it was better to wait. Bloodlines could attract deities and demons to submit to them, but it could also attract the greed of deities and demons. Right now, there were only 2 Grotto Heaven level cultivators here, him and Sima Quan. Before more people of the same generation arrived, it was better not to do this. He turned around and asked, "Sure Jinren, according to your calculations, how long will it take to build this spell altar?" Sure Jinren replied, reporting to Jinren Chan, "If no one comes to disturb us, according to this speed, it can be built in about 100 days. Zhang Chan nodded, but he didn't think it would be so smooth. This battle involved the Almighty who was fighting with his master, and when the time came, there would most likely be people coming to attack. At this moment, his heart suddenly moved and he looked in a direction. There was a crack in the void, and there was a clear rainbow light shining from inside. He instantly knew that another person of the same generation had arrived. Chapter 1825. Zhang Quan saw that the person was dressed in a Nujiang Daoist robe. He looked handsome and extraordinary, but he didn't know him. He only saw that the other party's mana was strong and his chi permeated the air. He knew that this person wasn't simple. He greeted politely, "How should I address you, Daoist friend?" The person bowed and said, "Are you Jinren Chan?" "I am Hua Yingling, a cultivator from the Yitong realm. I was enlightened by the Great Master, which is why I have my skills. Today, I am here to help under the Great Master's orders." Zhang Quan had never heard of Hua Yingling's name, but his skills couldn't be faked. He cupped his hands and said, "Daoist friend Hua, you are too kind." Hua Yingling smiled and nodded, "Jinren is too polite. There are many things that I am not clear about. I hope Jinren Chan can learn from you." Zhang Quan called out to the side. Soon, Lu Huan came and said, "What orders do you have, Jinren Chan?" Zhang Quan said, "Tell this Jinren Hua about the situation here, don't miss anything." Lu Huan hurriedly said, "It is my honor." He then bowed to Hua Yingling and said, "Jinren Hua, why don't we talk over here?" Hua Yingling said happily, "Thank you, Daoist friend." Lu Huan said, "You are too kind, Jinren." Zhang Quan wasn't good at greeting people. Seeing that the two of them moved to the side, he was happy and started to play with the red butterfly. From this thing's consciousness, he knew that there was a huge tribe behind it. He was now thinking about how to use this thing for his side, especially how to ensure that these monsters wouldn't go out of control after being summoned. He thought, if only sect leader Han or the people from Clear Feather sect were here, they would definitely have a way. At this moment, there was a sudden movement in the array. Everyone turned to look and saw a devil enter the array, and Han Ding followed closely behind. Seeing this, Zhang Quan laughed and said, "Youngster Han, you're back." Han Dingy bowed, "Thank you for your concern, Jinren Chan. Thanks to Jinren Sima Quan for saving me, I wouldn't have been able to escape." Zhang Quan casually asked a few questions and found out the reason why he was taken to the blood sect. He said boldly, "Sima Jinren is right. You don't have to worry about other things. Just stay here. Even if someone comes, we will stop them." Originally, they had Gong Qi and Mo Wan, 2 profound opening realm cultivators. Now that Hua Yingling had arrived, along with him and Sima Quan, they had the battle prowess of 5 Grotto Heaven level cultivators. This was enough to go against any sect in the Xiong continent. Also, he thought that in the coming days, there would be more people coming here. So he didn't have to care about these natives. At that moment, Gao Jianfeng suddenly sensed that the fiend who brought Han Dingy here was behaving strangely. He turned around and felt an obscure consciousness entering his mind. He took a deep breath, turned around and said, Reverend Chan, Reverend Sect Master has said that the Li Mingshu's sect has already given the order for their disciples to kill the outsiders and the gods and monsters of the void. It is very possible that they know something, and they want us to be on our guard. Zhang Chan chuckled and said, that's to be expected. This must be the mastermind who fought with the revered master. Lu Huayan asked, Jinren Chan, sect leader Sima Quan said to establish a sect here as a cover. Now that we might be exposed, do we still want to do this? Zhang Chan said, stand. Why not? If we build the spell altar here, the range of the spell formation will expand continuously. Then, sooner or later, it will be exposed. If we are secretive, it will only make us look guilty. Since that is the case, why don't we be more proactive? If a powerful enemy comes, we will receive them. He looked at Hua Yingling and said, Fellow Hua, do you have any suggestions? Hua Yingling had a good demeanor and said humbly, I've just arrived here and there are many things I don't know. But just now, from what fellow Lu said, the 6 sects here don't seem to have a good relationship with each other. Here, he looked at Han Dingy and said, then fellow Daoist Han, we can make use of this. Zhang Chan reacted quickly. Hearing him say this, his eyes brightened and he laughed, not bad, not bad. This is a good plan. Fellow Daoist Hua has a good idea. The 6 sects didn't have a good relationship with each other, so they couldn't work together. If they thought that Han Dingy was using this as an excuse to go against the Li Mingshu's sect, then the other sects wouldn't be in a hurry to jump out. Instead, they'd be happy to see them weaken this sect. What they needed the most now was time. If they could use this to delay, it wouldn't take long, just a few months. When the altar was 10% built, then they wouldn't have to worry about anything else. Hua Yingling smiled, I'm just saying. As long as Jinren Chan thinks it can be used, then it's good. Zhang Chan turned to Gao Jianfeng and said, can you pass a message to Jinren Sima? Gao Jianfeng said, yes, the demon head sent by Jinren Chan can pass a message for us. Zhang Chan said, alright, pass a few words for me. As he said this, his lips moved and his voice was transmitted into Gao Jianfeng's ears. Gao Jianfeng heard this and said, I'll do it now. He took out the incantation gesture and looked at the devil. After a while, the devil turned around and fled out of the formation. After Sima Quan sent Han Dingy away, he went back to find trouble with Mistress Ling. He didn't do this for Han Dingy, but because he thought that the Li Ming blood sect would definitely become an obstacle for cultivators like them. Since that was the case, he might as well kill them first. Moreover, he could feel that Mistress Ling was the most threatening one among the 6 clan leaders, so she should be killed first. He turned invisible, and after a few turns, he arrived outside the Ling ancestral house. There was also a blood pattern similar to the one on the Guanyang Tower, which hindered him. However, since he couldn't enter, he didn't have to force his way in. Even if the other party didn't receive the news of Han Dingy's disappearance, they would definitely come out tomorrow. Not long after, there was a commotion in the Ling ancestral house. At the same time, a green light rose and flew towards the place where Han Dingy was imprisoned. Sima Quan pondered for a moment, and decided that it was a good place to fight. Thus, he turned invisible and followed them silently. When Mistress Ling arrived at the belly of the mountain, she saw that the demon's belly was indeed empty. Her expression was very ugly. It was hard to imagine that someone could rescue someone under her nose. Just as she was feeling agitated, she felt a gust of cold wind rushing over. She also came to her senses, and at the same time, she was extremely angry. She didn't think that someone would dare to attack her in the sect. Fortunately, she was strong enough to immediately distinguish that the attacker was targeting her spirit and mind. She hurriedly activated the power contained in her bloodline to resist the attack. Originally, this was sufficient for her to deal with it. However, this invading force was extremely unusual, and her bloodline was only barely able to maintain it and was unable to expel it. Moreover, her own strength was being devoured bit by bit, and it wasn't long before she became dazed. The last bit of consciousness she had left told her that her body would be seized by him in the next step. At this critical moment, she gritted her teeth and let out a shrill howl. With a bang, a white light bloomed in the belly of the mountain, and her body instantly exploded. Sima Quan looked at the pile of white ash at his feet. Just now, Mistress Ling was quite decisive. She found that her body could be taken, so she simply opened the door and let him come in. Then she killed herself, wanting to kill him along the way. However, as a skyscraping demon, even if the person she possessed died, she couldn't just disappear with them. He understood that although the other party had abandoned his physical body, he had not truly disappeared. Instead, he had entered the dreamland. This was similar to the green goblin he had encountered last time. As long as the dreamland was not targeted, he could recover. However, it wasn't that he didn't have a way to deal with it. He reached out and touched the pile of white ash. If she wanted to return to the world, she had to have a place to stay. Now, he sent a gust of devil chi here. When the dream turned into the real world, it would first encounter this place. As long as he sensed it, he could step forward and extinguish the sign of movement, preventing her from returning. When the power of the dream was exhausted, she would no longer appear in the world. Now that Mistress Ling, who was the biggest threat to him, wasn't here, he could do whatever he wanted. Therefore, with a thought, thousands of demons appeared from his body and flew in different directions in the city. He looked outside and saw several lights coming. He knew that the movement just now had attracted the attention of other mighty people here, so he slowly restrained himself and turned invisible again. Just when he was fighting with Mistress Ling, a long dragon with scales and horns suddenly appeared outside the island where Zhang Chan and the others were. It stretched its head and claws in the clouds, circling and shouting, "The person who harmed my disciple, come out." Han Dingyi looked and said, "Jinren Chan, this should be someone from the dragon's sect." Zhang Chan snorted and said, "He's quite capable to be able to find our whereabouts." Gong Qi looked at the long dragon with 4 toes and a pearl hanging from its chin. He said in surprise, "Is that a real dragon?" Han Dingyi explained, "Not a real dragon, but a painted dragon." Gong Qi was confused, "Painted dragon?" Han Dingyi said, "I heard from the disciples of the dragon's sect that most of them have a skill. They can use their own blood to paint a picture of a dragon. They usually take the origin of their ancestral bloodline and use a secret technique to refine it. When they fight, they can draw out the dragon in the painting. This way, they can unleash the power of their bloodline to the fullest." Zhang Chan was amazed and said, "It looks like a real dragon, there are no flaws at all. He does have some skills, but no matter how much he looks like a real dragon, he's not a real dragon. Otherwise, this formation wouldn't be able to stop him." Huang Ling said, "Jinren Chan, if I want to pretend to be from a sect, this is a good chance for me to fight him. At the same time, I can also expose the grudge between me and the Li Ming blood sect." Just as Zhang Chan was about to make a move, Xian Qi stood up and put his hands together. "I've waited here for a long time, but I haven't done anything yet. You two were the ones who showed up before, now it's our turn." Zhang Chan said, "All right, let's see what you can do then." Just as Xian Qi was about to move, Huang Ling said from behind, "Friend, we can drag this battle out. If it's possible, why don't we fight for half a month?" Xian Qi's mind spun and he immediately understood. Once the battle started, before they understood the situation, the other sects would most likely watch from the sidelines. That would give them time to construct their altars. He immediately nodded and said, "I understand." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned into a streak of crimson light that shot into the sky. Chapter 1826. Gong Qi went outside and shook his body. His blood qi permeated the air, and he instantly turned into a giant bird with golden feathers. His body was covered in light, and he flapped his wings and charged towards the cloud dragon. That cloud dragon was stunned for a moment, as if he didn't believe that a bird would dare to challenge him. When the 2 giant claws grabbed him and tore his scales apart, and blood spilled everywhere, he finally reacted. He couldn't help but be furious. He swung his dragon head, and as his dragon horns came, his dragon tail also whipped over silently. Gong Chi didn't back down either. He hesitated, and slightly rose up. He spun in the air and dodged. Then, he bent down and charged, clashing with it again. This person from the dragon sect was called Jia Zhan. He was one of the 5 dragon tribes of the dragon sect. He was from the Jia family. This time, he suffered a huge loss. It wasn't that he was slow, but that the bloodline clans had a strict hierarchy. If they were similar, then the ancestral source they had would be similar to the power they had. It was as if the bloodline of the dragon, birds, and beasts like him were naturally suppressed. However, he didn't expect that the chi and blood of the mystic cultivators didn't belong to the same category as him. He couldn't use his experience at all. After the two fought for more than an hour, Jia Zhan felt that Gong Chi's abilities weren't below his. It seemed like he was still holding back. In any side, he could fight against the leader of a large clan. More importantly, the others seemed to have other helpers behind him. He felt that he wouldn't be able to win today, so he took a step back and shouted, "Stop!" Gong Chi laughed coldly. If they were really fighting to the death, it would be a joke to want him to stop with just one sentence. However, he remembered that Huang Ling just now wanted him to try his best to delay, so he stopped. He said, "What do you have to say, sir?" Jia Zhan said, "Who are you? Why are you making things difficult for my dragon sect?" Gong Chi frowned. "Didn't you come looking for me?" Jia Zhan said angrily, "You killed my dragon sect's elder first. Are you not allowing me to seek justice? Dragon sect elder?" Gong Chi sneered and said, "Then we'll have to ask you. One of my juniors was originally a disciple of your sect, yet you've handed him over to the Li Mingshu's sect and ended up killing him. We must save him. As for the patriarch of your sect, since he dares to do such a thing, don't blame me for being harsh." Jia Zhan was taken aback. He had understood the situation beforehand. "That Han Dingyi is your nephew?" Gong Chi snorted and said, "That junior of mine is a descendant of the dragon bloodline, and your side once said that anyone with such a bloodline can become a disciple of the dragon bloodline sect. He believed your words, and disregarded the advice of his elders, which was why he insisted on joining us. But he didn't know that your side's words didn't count at all. This kind of behavior is completely unlike a bloodline descendant sect." Jia Zhan also felt awkward. They had always looked down on disciples without any background. Even if they killed them, no one would stand up for them. But they had never imagined that Han Dingyi would have such a character backing him up. If they had known beforehand, why would they have pushed him out? In his mind, he was also cursing his subordinates for being so useless, doing such a thing without investigating the matter thoroughly. He coughed and said, "How should I address you, sir?" Gong Chi replied, "My surname is Gong." Gong clan. Jia Zhan couldn't think of any bloodline descendant clan with this surname, and he wouldn't know if there was such a character among the many bloodline descendant clans, so he tried to ask, "Could it be that you've come from the Qiao and Ji continents?" The Xiong continent, the Ji continent, and the Ji continent were the 3 largest continents in this world. Among them, the Xiong continent was the strongest, while the other continents were too far behind in terms of size and bloodline. There were also a dozen or so islands of even smaller sizes, which were even weaker and unlikely to produce a character of their level. Thus, Jia Zhan didn't even mention them. Gong Chi thought that although this place was far from the 2 continents, there was no guarantee that there was no connection between them. Thus, he simply gave a vague answer and said, "You don't have to worry about this, sir. Now that you know the reason, I will accompany you to the end." Jia Zhan pondered for a moment and said, "In that case, it was just an accident. I was too rash today. Farewell." After saying that, he turned around and left. Actually, to put it bluntly, the dragon sect was in the wrong first, and the other party wasn't someone to be trifled with. Although an elder died, he wasn't a member of the Jia clan, but a disciple of the Ju clan. He didn't have to risk his life for him. This time, the dragon sect also received a decree from the upper palace, saying that they had to kill the monsters and outsiders that came from the void, in case they were followers of the demon god. Not only that, they also received an order from the main sect, and the content was the same. However, he didn't think that it was Gong Chi after all. This kind of almighty who could easily destroy worlds was too far away from them. 1K Galaxy was so vast, he didn't think that it was such a coincidence that it happened to land on the Xiong continent. Seeing him leave, Gong Chi felt that it was a bit unbelievable. There was basically no turning back for this kind of thing. If it was a member of the Gong clan who was killed, he definitely wouldn't let it go. He didn't expect the other party to leave so decisively, but then he thought, maybe the other party saw that he couldn't take him down, so he went back to call for reinforcements. He descended back into the formation and told everyone about his judgment. Everyone else also thought the same, but after waiting for several days, there was still no one coming. It seemed like they really had to give up. Even so, he didn't let down his guard. As he constructed the altar, he took extra precautions. The Li Ming blood sect was in chaos at this moment. The originally brightly lit place was filled with smoke and fire. The disciples of the sect were attacking each other, and screams could be heard everywhere. The lanterns that were originally floating in the sky all fell down, and the tall buildings that were originally luxurious also collapsed one after another. Sima Quan stood on a tattered flying centipede zither, looking at the scene coldly. Since he released the tens of thousands of demons, most of the disciples here had become mentally confused, and they wantonly destroyed everything and everyone around them. However, the real bloodline descendants hid in their own territory and refused to come out. Because of this protection, they didn't suffer any damage. Instead, it was the junior disciples who were released into the awakening state who suffered the most. At this moment, he suddenly felt something. He saw a demon flying towards him, and at the same time, a thought was transmitted into his heart. He thought for a while and said, "Only targeting the Li Ming blood sect? That's exactly what I wanted." He looked around. Until now, there was still no one on the same level as Madame Ling who came out to take charge of the situation. He didn't know if it was because he destroyed Madame Ling's physical body, but she still didn't move despite the wanton destruction. However, he wasn't in a hurry. If this person still didn't come out, he was prepared to attack those clans one by one, and see if they could still endure it. On the Guanyang Tower, the 5 clan leaders looked at the scene below with anger in their eyes. However, when they thought of Madame Ling's fate, they knew that an extremely powerful enemy had sneaked in. As long as they didn't invade their own clans, none of them were willing to come out. At this moment, a crack suddenly appeared in the void. When the 5 of them saw it, they were all surprised and stood up at the same time. After a while, a handsome man wearing a mountain crown and luxurious clothes walked out. However, his eyes were a pair of snake eyes, which was especially eye-catching. The clan leader of the Bing clan was the first to bow and said, "Greetings, great master." The other 4 followed suit. The person who came was the clan leader of the Liming blood clan, Yen Chao. When he looked down, he instantly saw through the 4 paths. Other than this path, the other 3 paths were in a state of desolation and chaos. With a cold look in his eyes, he said unhappily, "How did the clan become like this after I left for only a few days?" The clan leader of the Bing clan said, "The enemy who came back this time is powerful. He seems to have a special secret technique that can hide his body. We have been looking for his whereabouts, but we can't find any traces of him." The clan leader of the Chu clan sighed and said, "If we can't find his whereabouts, we can't fight with him. Even if we go out, we may end up like clan leader Ling." Only then did Yen Chao realize that Madame Ling was not around. He asked, "How is Ling Ji?" The clan leader of the Bing clan said, "Clan leader Ling seems to have been plotted against and is now trapped in a dream, unable to come out." Xiao Ming, on the other hand, curled her lips and said, "The enemy we provoked this time might be related to her. Otherwise, why didn't they find someone else but her first? I think the clan was implicated by Madame Ling." Yen Chao waved his hand and said, "There's no need to investigate what exactly happened. What we need to do now is to get rid of the intruder." His eyes suddenly lit up, and a pair of snake eyes appeared high up in the sky. They turned left and right, as if searching for a target. Not long after, they suddenly looked in one direction. Sima Quan frowned. He could feel that the other party had already discovered his existence. He felt that this clan leader of the Liming Blood clan was not simple, and his abilities were far above the others. He pondered for a moment. This was his home ground, and he had no chance of winning. Since that was the case, there was no need for him to stay here. With a sway of his body, he left the place. In reality, Yan Chao did not find any traces of Sima Quan. He could only sense his general location. However, at this moment, he even lost this feeling. He deduced that the other party must have realized something was wrong and retreated first. He said, "The intruder has retreated, but he wouldn't attack us for no reason. Tell me what Madame Ling has done recently." Xiao Ming was an old rival of Madame Ling, so she knew this the best. She hurriedly told Yan Chao about Madame Ling's recent actions. After listening, Yan Chao said, "The problem should be with that dragon bloodline." He reached out and took out a statue of a mysterious snake. He rubbed its head a few times, closed his eyes to sense it for a moment, then put it away. He said, "This person is still above the Xiong continent sea region, but he's blocked by a layer of barrier. The means here are extraordinary. Maybe it was set up by the person who just now retreated." The clan leader of the Bing clan said, "Then should we immediately chase after him?" Yan Chao waved his hand and said indifferently, "I've never seen the means of the person who attacked us, and there's no such person in the Xiong continent. He must have come from outside. It's fine if there's only one, but if there's someone of the same generation, it won't be easy to deal with." He pondered for a moment, then said, "Write a letter to the clan leaders of the 5 clans. Tell them that they've found the whereabouts of the followers of the fiend gods, and ask them to join forces with the Liming Blood clan to kill them." Everyone was startled, but they quickly understood that their clan leader was using this name to pull the 5 clans to fight with them. Moreover, the other party's origin was strange, so it made sense. They couldn't help but cheer in their hearts. Regardless of whether the intruder was really a follower of the fiend gods, he had offended the Liming Blood clan, so they definitely couldn't let him go. They all said, "We'll send the letter now." Chapter 1827. Inside Bushutian, Zhang Yan was still fighting back against the shocking Wei Li. Although he didn't know how much longer this would last, he could sense that the other side's power was gradually fading away. Bushutian's Wei Li was boundless, but if he wanted to control it, he also needed a foundation. In this regard, he had the advantage because of his Dharma body. His opponent was clearly not as imposing as before. If at first it had been a raging sea, then now it was a calm wave heading towards the shore. In this regard, anyone who hadn't truly reached the 3rd level of the true Yang stage couldn't really be considered to have boundless Wei Li. After all, there was still a chance that they would wither away. Because he was winning, he had a bit more power to spare. Earlier, he had been able to send Hua Yingling back. It wasn't hard to predict that as the tide of victory began to turn, his advantage would only grow. Because more and more cultivators were sent there, and there was no lack of people that were related to him by karma amongst them. Coupled with his continuous sensing for a long period of time, he was already able to faintly sense the situation in the heavens and the earth there. Even though it was merely some incomplete fragments, it was sufficient for him to understand it slightly. After a moment's thought, he circulated his magic power. This time, he grabbed a few ancient demons from the mountain and sea realm and tossed them into that world. Although the person behind him seemed to be on the wane, he hadn't completely let down his guard. That was why when he had sent Hua Yingling and the other junior disciples, he had only sent them one at a time to ensure success. These ancient demons were different. They had been captured from the mountain and sea realm, and had simply used some powerful magic to alter their memories. Although most of them would be lost in the mirage, as long as 1 or 2 made it there, it wouldn't be considered a failure. On an island in Alien World, Zhang Chan and the others had a discussion. They felt that since they had been discovered by the natives, there was no need for them to hide their tracks anymore. They could set up a sect here. Of course, their true goal was to build an altar, and this was only a cover for their actions. Zhang Chan said, When fellow Taoist Gong and fellow Taoist Imo performed their cultivation techniques and divine abilities, they were quite similar to the technique used here. Even the people from the dragon sect didn't recognize them, so they could pretend to be blood descendants. Gong Chi said, according to fellow Taoist Han, all of the bloodline descendants here have an ancestral origin. What kind of monster should we borrow the name of? Mo Wan said indifferently, there are countless gods and monsters in the void, and I can just casually fabricate one. How would others know? Zhang Chan tilted his head and said, Brat Han, you've been here the longest, so you know the most about this place. What do you think? Han Dingyi thought for a moment and said, the people here have the legacy blood plate. They can trace the source and verify their identity. Although we can't allow them to examine us, we can ask about the existence of gods and monsters here. Zhang Chan asked curiously, what do you mean by asking about the void? Han Dingyi said, according to the saying of this world, all gods and monsters are born from the void. There's a saying that there's a mother of the void. Those who are skilled can directly ask the void, and if there's no response, then it proves that there's no such god and monster here. Mo Wan frowned and said, in that case, we can only pretend to be a god and monster that already exists in this world? Han Dingyi said, yes. Mo Wan said, but fellow Taoist Han once said that these gods and monsters all have the ability to sense them. If we pretend to be them, will it be possible to attract them? Han Dingyi said, there's that possibility. No one in this world has ever dared to pretend to be one because they're afraid of being targeted by the gods and monsters. Zhang Chan didn't think much of it. He waved his hand and said, what's there to be afraid of? Let's do it this way. It'll only take a few months to build the altar. If that god and monster dares to come here, we'll just kill them as well. Huang Ling smiled and said, actually, there's no need to worry about this. According to fellow Taoist Han, even if the gods and monsters come here, there'll be people in this world to deal with them. Everyone thought about it and realized that it was indeed the case. One of the main responsibilities of the 6 sects on the Xiong land was to deal with the gods and monsters that invaded the world from the void. If that kind of result was really triggered, how could this generation know about the situation here? Whether they were willing or not, they had to face it. Moreover, they were still on guard against outsiders and the void divine official, so they couldn't ignore it. Since there was no need to worry about this matter, everyone didn't worry about it anymore. After a short discussion, they decided on a god and monster called Sang Shou as the source of the bloodline. From the records, this god and monster was extremely rare and never attacked on their own. However, there was one thing about it. It had many transformations and most of the time, it appeared in the form of a strange bird. Its blood descendants were also extremely rare in the various worlds, so it could be used to the greatest extent to prevent people with ulterior motives from investigating. As for the name of the sect, because it was only used to conceal the true purpose, everyone originally planned to randomly name it. But Huang Ling made a suggestion. She said that after they took over this land, it would be hard to say if they would need this sect in the future. So they couldn't name it too casually. But everyone suggested a few names, and none of them were satisfactory. In the end, Huang Ling still said, the great heaven created by the great deity is called Xianyu. Why don't we call it the Hidden Blood Sect? Zhang Chan immediately made up his mind and said, let's use this name. After everyone decided on this matter, they went to busy themselves. They either regulated their breaths and qi, rested and built up their energy, or strengthened the formation, or paid attention to the situation everywhere. However, nothing happened for a few days, except that Sima Quan didn't return. However, everyone wasn't worried for him. The body of a heavenly devil was the hardest to eliminate. Even if all of them were defeated and died, he would probably be fine. On this day, the void split open, and 2 people came out. Their appearances were rough and tall, and they were wrapped in a layer of hard armor and leather robes. Looking at their behavior, they didn't look like cultivators with a human body. Zhang Chan and the others immediately saw through their true appearances and determined that they were 2 ancient demons. However, since they could come here, they must be here to help in battle. As expected, the 2 of them came forward and bowed. The one on the left said respectfully, "The two of us have come here under the great deity's orders. We await your orders." Zhang Chan said excitedly, "It's good that you've come. We happen to be lacking manpower here. Are there only the two of you?" That person said, reporting to Jinren, "There were originally 7 of us. However, in the end, only the 2 of us made it here. The whereabouts of the rest are unknown." Zhang Chan didn't care about this. From his perspective, even if one of them came, it would be a help. Thus, he said, "Wait here first. I'll come and call you when I have something to do." The 2 ancient demons hurriedly nodded. For the next month, everything was peaceful. No one came looking for them. The construction of the spell altar was very smooth. It looked like it only needed another 2 to 3 months of stability before it could be completely built. However, people like Zhang Chan, Hua Yingling, and the others knew that it wouldn't be so peaceful in the future. Something would definitely happen. Even if the people of this world didn't realize it, the powerful being who fought against Zhang Yan probably wouldn't allow them to achieve their goal so easily. In the Li Ming blood sect, although they had received orders from the Yan dynasty to send letters to the various sects, the result was unexpected. Not a single sect was willing to respond directly, and all of them were perfunctory. Even the Dragon sect, whose elders had been killed, ignored them. Actually, this shouldn't be the case. However, because of the battle between Gong Xian and Jia Zhan, the latter revealed the conflict between them and the Li Ming blood sect. Originally, the 5 sects were also skeptical about this. However, the Li Ming blood sect's action of sending letters confirmed them that there was indeed a deep conflict between them and the outsiders. If that was the case, why should they get involved? Apart from that, there was another reason. Although the 6 sects were at odds with each other, it was only limited to the lower levels. There were very few situations where the descendants of large clans really fought each other. Therefore, now that they really had to fight to the death, they all retreated and found excuses for themselves. When the sect masters of the Li Ming blood sect received the news, their expressions didn't look too good. However, Yan Chao was unusually calm. He said, "I expected it." The conflict between the 6 sects had been going on for a long time. He didn't really expect to be able to gather them together with a single letter. He didn't think his reputation had reached that level yet. Moreover, there was still the evil Yang blood sect, his old rival, causing trouble in the dark. All he needed was a name. This way, he could legitimately ask the distant Star Upper Palace to intervene. With his status as an elder of the Upper Palace, once he reported this matter, he believed that there would definitely be a response. If it was proven that he was wrong in the end, it wouldn't matter. He would have plenty of time to slowly clean up the mess in the future. However, if he was lucky enough to get it right and destroy the Void Demon God's arrangements, he could avoid a disaster. Just as he expected, the distant Star Upper Palace obviously attached great importance to this matter. Just now, it didn't take long for them to send 2 elders over. These 2 people knew Yan Chao. One was called Jiang Wu, while the other was called Feng Li. They used to be sect masters, but now they were stationed in the distant Star Palace. The 2 of them entered the Li Ming blood sect. After greeting each other, Jiang Wu asked directly, "Elder Yan, where is the otherworldly being you spoke of?" Yan Chao brought out a sea map that he had prepared beforehand. He pointed at it and said, "He's above this sea region." Jiang Wu glanced at it and said, "We'll go check it out right away. I only hope that Elder Yan isn't mistaken." Yan Chao said, "Everyone has come from afar. Don't you want to rest for a while?" Jiang Wu said, "No need." After saying this, he turned around and walked out. Seeing him like this, Feng Li couldn't help but show a helpless expression. She apologized to Yan Chao and hurriedly followed. When the 2 of them arrived outside, they soared into the clouds and rushed towards where Zhang Chan and the others were. Halfway there, Feng Li asked, "Elder Jiang, do you think this is true?" Without waiting for Jiang Wu's reply, he said in a mocking tone, "I thought it couldn't be such a coincidence." He found the whereabouts of the demon god's followers so soon after the decree was issued. Could it be that he's using the power of the distant star upper palace to eliminate the dissidents? Jiang Wu said coldly, whether it's true or not, since we're here, we won't come in vain. We have to get to the bottom of this. If Yan Chao is being selfish, he'll naturally go to the palace to punish him. It has nothing to do with us. Feng Li agreed, Elder Jiang is right. Not long after, the two of them arrived at the place indicated on the map. When they looked down, they saw nothing but the vast ocean waves. Yet, they could feel that there was indeed something down there. Jiang Wu said seriously, something is indeed wrong. Even in the distant star upper palace, I've never seen such a method. It seems that we've made the right decision to come here. Even if the person down there isn't a demon god's follower, his background is still suspicious. Chapter 1828. Just now, the arrival of the two from distant star upper palace was noticed by the people inside the formation. Mo Wan saw that the two were only talking outside and didn't do anything else. She whispered, Spiritual Master Chan, it seems like these two are here to probe me. Zhang Chan said casually, as long as they don't attack, then ignore them. If they attack, then I'll have to trouble the two of you to go out for a while and spread the name of our sect. Mo Wan immediately said, of course, we'll do it. Jiang Wu and Feng Li were still discussing how to deal with the situation. Feng Li said, Elder Jiang, it seems like this place is not a good place to go. Jiang Wu thought about it carefully. He also felt that the people below weren't simple. It wasn't a good idea to act rashly in a situation where they didn't know what was going on. But since they were already here, if they returned without doing anything, it would go against their original intentions. Feng Li had a different attitude. He always thought that the two of them were being used by the Yan dynasty. Moreover, this was not his domain. It was better not to act if they could avoid it. As for the rumor of the devil god, even if the situation down there was really related to the devil god, he didn't want to go down there. The rumor said that the devil god had monstrous power. Who knew what his believers were capable of? However, Jiang Wu didn't think for too long. He raised his hand, and the densely packed scales on his arm rose up. From his shoulder down, it suddenly transformed into a gigantic orchid hand with thick knuckles. The entire hand was over 10 feet long, and the meridians and skin at the root of the hand were connected to the body of a human. It looked strange and ferocious. All fate-opening realm blood descendants were able to mutate a part of their bloodline. However, there were only a few people who were able to do it as easily as he did and still maintain his power without losing any of its power. His bloodline came from the Infant Devouring, a famous celestial monster in the void. However, after he reached fate opening, he didn't walk the path of the mystical arts but instead, he pursued the ancestral body. His cultivation was still lacking. As long as he refined the last trace of the post-celestial human bloodline, he could completely become a celestial monster. However, he was different from the celestial monsters born in the void. He possessed human intelligence and wouldn't follow his instincts. However, this step was incomparably difficult. In the past, most of the bloodline descendants were stopped at this step due to various reasons. At this moment, he swung his arm downwards and instantly transformed into a beam of light that shot downwards. Wherever he passed, the atmosphere split and the clouds split apart. No matter what was below, it seemed like it could be crushed with a single strike. At the same time, he and Feng Li stared fixedly, wanting to see what exactly was blocking their line of sight. However, before the beam of light could fall, a bloody aura rose up from below. Within it, a bloated tree-like monster could be faintly seen. It was difficult to tell what it was, but it opened its crown and opened up a hole. It looked like it had swallowed the beam of light whole. Jiang Wu's expression couldn't help but become solemn, and the arm that flew away gradually grew back. He said seriously, Elder Feng, you are experienced and knowledgeable. Can you recognize what bloodline this is? Feng Li looked closely and said with a frown, it doesn't look like any of the monsters we know of. He couldn't say that he understood all of the monsters that appeared in front of people, but he had heard of most of them. He believed that if it appeared in front of him, he would definitely be able to recognize it. However, the other's bloodline was something he couldn't figure out. However, there were countless monsters in the void, and the ones that people truly knew were just a drop in the ocean. There were many that people had never seen before, and there were even rumors that there were some monsters that people couldn't detect at all. From the beginning of the world, they had been silently watching everything that happened in the world. No one knew what their goal was. It seemed that what they saw in front of them could only further prove that the other party was not a native of this world, but had come from beyond the heavens. Just now, the two of them were talking when they saw another beam of bloody light soar into the sky. It transformed into a large golden-winged bird that soared into the sky and stood beside the tree monster, facing the two of them from afar. It opened its mouth and said, "Who are you, and why have you come to invade my Hidden Blood sect?" Hidden Blood sect? Jiang Wu went through the names in his mind, but he didn't have any impression of such a name. There shouldn't have been such a sect in the Shang continent before. If the other party didn't make it up, then it should have been established not long ago. This wasn't anything strange. In reality, as long as the descendants of the monsters had strength, or if the monsters at the source of their ancestral veins were strong enough, it wouldn't be a big deal for them to establish a blood sect. The key was whether they could be recognized by the four great sections. If they didn't have strength, they wouldn't be able to establish themselves. At this moment, Feng Li stood up and said, "We are the elders of the Jade Star Upper Palace. Because of this, a great sect reported that there were followers of the demon god wandering in the sea, so we came here to investigate. Just now, because we saw that there was something strange down there, it was very suspicious, so we came to investigate. We didn't know that your sect was here." "I see." Gong Qi seemed to believe his explanation, and his expression softened. However, he was secretly on guard. He didn't know where the Jade Star Upper Palace was, but he could tell that its status was above the great sections. The arrival of these two people meant that there was an even greater force eyeing this place. At this moment, Jiang Wu said, "We are very familiar with the blood sects on the Shang continent, but we have never heard of the Hidden Blood sect. May I know where you came from?" Gong Qi replied coldly, "We are not under your control, so we don't have to answer your questions." Feng Li chuckled and said, "You have misunderstood. Elder Jiang doesn't have any other intentions, he just wants to check if there are followers of the demon god here. If we can explain things clearly, it will be beneficial for everyone. I believe that you don't want to get into trouble because of this, right?" Gong Qi seemed to seriously consider for a while, then raised his head and said, "Then what do you two want?" Feng Li said, "May I ask, which deity or monster do you all worship?" Gong Qi seemed displeased and said, "Does this have anything to do with the demon god you two speak of?" Feng Li said, "You should know that there are countless gods and monsters in the void. Some of them are savage and love to kill. Among them, there are even some that worship the demon god. If the descendants of these gods and monsters fall into the world, it will be a disaster, so I have to ask." Gong Qi was silent for a while, then said as if he had no choice, "The ancestor of our bloodline is Zhang Shou." This was something that had been decided long ago. However, when he said the name of the monster, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. It was as if something in the void had awakened and was staring at his back. Immediately, he felt a chill run down his spine. His gaze turned and looked in Imo Wan's direction, and he found that there was a trace of surprise and solemnity in her eyes. Obviously, he wasn't the only one who felt this. However, there were still two opponents in front of him, so it wasn't the time to pursue this. Zhang Shou. Jiang Wu frowned. Although such gods and monsters existed in this world, this one just happened to be one of the gods and monsters that he had only heard of but never seen, so it was very difficult to verify their relationship. However, he knew that if he couldn't directly take down this so-called Zhang Shou blood sect today, then he could only stop here. He glanced at Feng Li, and the latter immediately understood his thoughts. She smiled apologetically at Gong Qi and Imo Wan, saying, "Excuse us for disturbing you today. We still have to go to other places to investigate, so we'll take our leave here." Gong Qi and Imo Wan didn't stop him, and allowed him to leave. Then, they also descended into the formation. The two of them originally remembered the horrifying feeling they had just now, and were prepared to properly investigate. However, the strange thing was that when the two of them returned, they unexpectedly forgot about this matter at the same time. At this time, Jiang Wu and Feng Li were on their way back. Jiang Wu seemed to be pondering something, and he didn't speak along the way. Only when they were about to arrive at the blood sect did he open his mouth, saying, "Elder Feng, have you seen Song Shou's descendant?" Feng Li shook her head, saying, "I've never seen him before." Jiang Wu said in a low voice, "So, what the two of them said can't be verified?" Feng Li pondered for a moment, then said, "Unless they're willing to take out the bloodline inheritance disc, but that's impossible. If they take it out, it's equivalent to revealing their own background." Jiang Wu became silent again. Feng Li said, "Just now, I thought that Elder Jiang would immediately attack them." Jiang Wu expressionlessly said, "These two people are fearless, so they obviously have something else to rely on. To be able to establish a sect under the eyes of the 6 great sects, it's impossible to say that they don't have some strength. With just the two of us, our strength is still insufficient, so we can only find more people." Feng Li couldn't help but be startled, saying, "Elder Jiang, are you going to report to your superiors?" Jiang Wu said with certainty, "Of course, and it can't be delayed. If this person is really a follower of the demon god, then it's very likely that he's trying to guide the demon god over. We must stop him as soon as possible." After the two returned to the Li Ming blood sect, they immediately sent a letter to the distant Star Upper Palace, saying that it was indeed as Yan Chao said, they found people who were suspected to be followers of the demon god, but due to their insufficient strength, they asked for more people to be sent to help. After waiting for more than 10 days, 2 people finally came, both with strange appearances. The one with white hair and yellow eyebrows was called Wenren, and the one with long hands and feet was called Dongshu. Jiang Wu was very dissatisfied with the two's late arrival. He said, "Elders, it's been a long time since I submitted the letter, why did you only come now?" Dongshu sighed and said, "Elder Jiang, I'm afraid that since the Upper Palace's edict was issued, letters have been sent to us from all the realms, saying that traces of the demon god have been found, so we have to go everywhere to investigate, so now we're very short of people. It's already because of your friendship that we could arrive within half a month." Jiang Wu only knew that the situation had come to this. He asked, "Then have you found the whereabouts of the followers of the demon god?" Dongshu said, "As far as I know, there's no one so far." Jiang Wu nodded and said with a very serious expression, "And it's very likely that the people I met here are the followers of the demon god." Dongshu could not help but become serious when he heard this. Jiang Wu walked on the path of the demon god, and this kind of bloodline had an innate sense. If he insisted on one thing, it was very likely to be correct. His eyes became extremely sharp, and he said, "Is it enough for the 4 of us?" Jiang Wu said, "Maybe not enough, but as long as we gather the people of the 6 sects here, it's enough." The strength of any one of the 4 of them was comparable to a sect master. In addition, they could use the name of the distant Star Upper Palace to summon all the sects here. With such a large force, it would be enough to destroy the place that was suspected to be the gathering place of the Fiend Celestial believers. Chapter 1829. Jiang Wu and the other 3 began to gather the people from the 6 sects on the same day. Because the distant Star Upper Palace placed great importance on this, even if the other 5 sects were unwilling, they had to come. However, in order to express their dissatisfaction, they delayed as much as they could. Therefore, when the people from the 6 sects gathered at the Liang blood sect, another half a month had passed. Not only that, every sect only sent 1 person as a token. None of the sect masters showed up. Their attitude was very perfunctory. Jiang Wu was extremely annoyed by this, because if his judgment was correct, then every minute delayed meant that there was a higher chance that the demon god would descend into the world. However, these sects had completely disregarded the bigger picture. Jiang Wu didn't even think about it. Once the demon god descended into the world, how could he possibly stay out of it? However, even though he hated these people, there was nothing he could do. The 5 sect masters were all elders of the upper palace like him. Everyone was on equal footing. If it wasn't for the upper palace's decree, they probably wouldn't have come at all. Fortunately, although only one person from each sect came, this was not a small force. In addition, as the party who reported this matter, the Liang blood sect had to give their all. He believed that it was enough to suppress those who were suspected to be the demon god's followers. After everything was arranged, he summoned the monsters under the sea and rowed the mountain boats to the sea region where Zhang Chan and the others were. Deep under the Xiong continent, Sima Quan was walking in a cave. He suddenly stopped and looked in a certain direction. He thought, finally here. Although he was outside, countless demons were hiding in the Liang blood sect. There were also many disciples who were infected by demon qi. With these, he could pay attention to every movement here at any time. Of course, the disciples below could not know the actions of the upper echelons. However, the arrival of the people from the 5 sects could not be hidden. In addition, just now, they were probing his base. It was not hard to tell that something big was about to happen. It was obvious who the target was. He immediately summoned a demon and poured his consciousness into it. Then, he ordered it to go back and pass on the order so that Zhang Chan and the others could prepare in advance. Then, he reached out and grabbed a handful of crystal jade from the wall. He said, "Looks like we have to move faster. We might be able to make it in time." Previously, he did not return, but in fact, he had been collecting these jade sand outside. Due to the lack of spiritual opportunity in this world, the array formation had been relying on the Dharma treasures and the power of the earth fire to maintain itself. It would have been fine under normal circumstances, but it was not enough to deal with a big battle. He believed that since there was such a thing in this world, there must be a source for it. Later on, after countless demons investigated it, they discovered that such a thing actually came from the void, and it was brought here by the gods. When these monsters born in the void reached a certain level, they would unconsciously absorb some of the essence of the stars. However, they relied on their innate abilities, so they were unable to refine these things. Thus, they settled down. When these gods and monsters were destroyed or killed in various parts of the world, the unrefined essence dispersed. After being contaminated by the turbid air of the world or attracted by some heavenly materials and earthly treasures, these things were finally formed. As there were many impurities in it and the people of this world did not cultivate spiritual vigor, they focused on bloodline. Hence, they had never thought of using it to increase their strength. However, it was different for cultivators. With a little bit of sacrificial refining, they could turn it into something similar to spiritual vigor for their own use. However, these were not naturally formed. They were formed by the essence of the gods and monsters, which was why they were useful to low-level cultivators like Han Dingy. However, when they reached their level, not only could they not refine it, it would also cause their own qi dynamic to be impure. Even so, it was still an item that could replace spiritual opportunity, but it could be used to help the array formation. Previously, he had found a few places that produced a large amount of jade sand, but none of them could be compared to the one in front of him. Thinking about it, it was easy for people to collect it from the surface. This place was deep underground, and since ancient times, no one had discovered it. Hence, it was of such a scale. He blew out a breath, and as a cold wind blew past, the jade sand on the cave wall rustled and fell. Upon closer inspection, it could be seen that the impurities in each grain had been refined, and it gradually became clear and bright. On the other side, ever since Jiang Wu and Feng Li came over, Zhang Chan and the others could tell that they would not let the matter rest. Therefore, they had been continuously building the formation during these days. If it was on the 9 continents, after so many days, and with so many cultivators here, the slightly cruder mountain gate array formation would have been set up. However, due to the lack of spiritual vigor, they could not expect the array formation to pose much of a threat to the invading enemy. They could only think of ways to trap and confuse the enemy. At this moment, Gao Jianfeng saw a demon entering the array. Then, a wave of consciousness entered his mind. He was shocked and said loudly, "Dear Zhenren, just now, the sect leader has sent news that the people of the 6 sects have gathered together and are heading towards me. It seems like they are going to make a big move. Zhang Quan sensed for a while and realized that the golden bugs that were placed near the blood sect did not have any reaction. He then sent the golden bugs from a further place, but they still could not see anything. However, this proved that there was a problem, and he knew that it was not fake. He said, "Everyone, prepare to face the enemy." Mo Wan said, "Jinren Chan, if we fight the people of the 6 sects now, we might not have enough people. Should we call sect leader Sima back?" Zhang Quan thought for a while and replied, "No need. At this time, with sect leader Sima supporting us from the outside, it is actually beneficial to us. Moreover, if there is any news, we will be able to know immediately." He looked at everyone. "Haven't we already prepared for this generation? There is no need to be afraid." If the people of the 6 sects came together, he was not confident that he could fight them. Fortunately, they were not without backup. In these few days, another 3 ancient demons came, and their strength had increased by a lot. Huang Ling smiled. "To be able to have 2 months of peace is already a pleasant surprise, there is no need to ask for too much." Zhang Quan said, "You are right. If everything goes smoothly, the altar will be completed in another 30 to 40 days. We do not need to win, we just need to hold on for this period of time." About 2 hours later, an object suddenly flew in from outside the array. Everyone thought that it was the people of the 6 sects, but when they looked, they realized that it was a flying boat, but there was no one on it. Huang Ling seemed to be deep in thought, and turned around to say, "Jinren Chan, I am afraid that this is sent by sect leader Sima. There might be something on it." Zhang Chan's spirit was lifted, and he said, "Let it in." Hearing his order, Lu Huayan immediately went forward and opened a door, allowing the spiritual boat to enter. They realized that it was filled with small pearls that looked like crystal jade. Even though they were of different sizes, they all shone faintly. Han Dingyi said in shock, "Jade sand seed?" Zhang Quan went forward and grabbed it, and felt a mixed spiritual vigor spread out. He laughed and said, "Good stuff, it was delivered just in time. With these, the array can be maintained for a few more days." Now that they did not know when the people of the 6 sects would appear, he did not hesitate, and immediately asked Huang Ling to arrange this matter. The jade sand seed that Sima Quan had gathered this time had already been refined, and the ones he picked were all full of spiritual essence. With everyone's combined efforts, in less than 4 hours, the entire array was completely transformed, showing some of the original atmosphere that a large array should have. Another half a day passed, and there was finally movement on the surface of the sea. There was a rumbling sound, but the interval between each rumble was rather long. Zhang Quan looked over, and saw an incomparably large monster striding in the sea. On its shoulder was a large city, and there were dozens of other monsters that looked like giant turtles, also dragging mountains and palaces. It could be seen that wherever they passed, the air distorted and the seawater boiled. Sensing carefully, he could faintly sense a dozen or so strong forces. It was obvious that there were many enemies this time. Gong Xian and the others also saw this scene, and secretly rejoiced. Luckily Sima Quan had delivered the jade sand seed half a day earlier. This half a day was extremely crucial, and compared to before and after, it was very different. If the enemy had attacked a little earlier, it could have been a different situation. Zhang Quan thought for a moment. If he directly waited for the enemy to come knocking on his door, that would be too passive. It would be good to delay for a while, so he immediately called out and ordered 2 ancient demons to go out and face the enemy. He also told them that if the situation was not right, they should try to escape and not fight to the death. These 2 ancient demons were called Great Sage Shi Shao and Great Sage Pek Hu. Hearing his orders, they immediately raised their voices and said, "We will follow your orders." Their memories had long been changed by Zhang Yan Weili, and they did not have any concept of life and death. As long as Zhang Quan and the others gave the order, they definitely would not retreat. After receiving the order, they immediately left the array and sprinted in the direction of the monster. Zhang Quan watched carefully from behind. To say that the combat ability of the ancient demons was very high was not necessarily true, but they each had their own special abilities. Moreover, as long as the essence of their vitality was not completely used up, they would not truly die. Using this generation to test the abilities of the enemy couldn't be better. Jiang Wu and the others stood on the big city carried by the monster. When the people below saw two people flying in front of them, they asked, "Elders, the enemy is flying here. Should we send someone to stop them?" Dong Shu said at the side, "We can send someone to ask first. If they are willing to surrender, we can also avoid a battle." As soon as he said this, the people of the 6 sects all agreed. Jiang Wu's eyes fell on Wenxiao, who was also an elder, and said politely, "Then, may I ask if the elder can go with us?" Wenxiao nodded his head. Suddenly, the brilliant rainbow sand slowly spread out behind him, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into 3 pairs of wings. He leaped up into the sky and went to meet the incoming people under the gaze of the crowd. Then, the two sides stopped at a distance, as if they were talking about something. But after a while, the two sides started to fight at the same time. Jiang Wu watched carefully and saw that the two opposite him had changed into the appearance of the monsters that he had never seen before. At first, Wenxiao was fighting against 2 monsters alone, but he was not at a disadvantage at all. Moreover, he seized several opportunities to launch heavy attacks, which made his opponents wail and wail miserably. But gradually, he noticed that something was wrong. No matter how injured the two opposite him were, they would recover soon, and it seemed that their combat ability was no different from before. On the contrary, Wenxiao seemed to be not as strong as before because he had used the secret method of the bloodline several times. Jiang Wu's expression became serious, and he felt that something was wrong. He immediately said, "Elder Dong Shu, the situation is not right. Please go and support Elder Wenxiao." But as soon as he finished speaking, the situation on the battlefield suddenly changed. One of the monsters on the opposite side suddenly opened its mouth and swallowed Wenxiao whole. Chapter 1830. When the people of the sect saw Wenfeng being swallowed, those who did not understand the situation were all shocked. Elder Dong Shu hurriedly said, "Everyone, do not be shocked. With Elder Wenfeng's ability, how could he be defeated so easily?" As expected, there was a flash of light in the air, and Wenfeng's figure that had disappeared suddenly appeared again to fight with the 2 ancient monsters as though the one that had been swallowed was just an illusion. But those with good eyesight could see that just now, Wenfeng had been swallowed. This could not be faked. They looked towards Dong Shu as though they wanted an answer. Dong Shu felt that there was nothing hard to say. If they understood each other's methods, it would be easier for them to work together. He explained, "Elder Wenfeng's ancestral bloodline is the 1,000 Wasps. Everyone, do not worry about him." Everyone came to a sudden realization. The 1,000 Wasps wasn't a particularly powerful god-fiend, but it wasn't the name of a single god-fiend. Rather, it was the collective name of countless identical individuals. Perhaps this Elder Wenxiao was just one of them. Of course, it was impossible for thousands of gods and monsters to have the same strength. If that was the case, they would have been invincible long ago. Therefore, there was only one true power. Only after it was killed would another come out. Evil Sun Blood Sect Elder Ji Chong chuckled and said, "Elder Wenfeng has such ability, but he cannot continue like this forever. There should be a limit. After all, when he truly becomes 1,000 wasps, he will become a part of this monster, and will no longer have his own self. Only by suppressing himself within a certain limit can he not surpass it, and also possess a certain bloodline and mystical abilities. Am I right?" Hearing his words were very reasonable, everyone nodded. Jiang Wu looked at him discontentedly. This was the truth. Otherwise, he would not have been worried just now. But now that Ji Chong said it, it was clearly boosting the other side's morale and diminishing his own. Dong Shu said immediately, "Elder Jiang, I'll go forward and give Elder Wenxiao a hand now." Jiang Wu said, "Thank you, Elder Dong Shu." Elder Dong Shu took a deep breath, and his body swelled up rapidly, like a bag filled with air. But his limbs were well proportioned, and he didn't feel bloated at all. Then he floated up, and with a sudden sound, he flew toward the front. Seeing this, one of the two ancient demons immediately came to deal with him. But before he could get close, he suddenly stopped. Dong Shu grabbed him and pressed him on his chest. The ancient demon immediately turned into a picture, which was engraved there like a tattoo. However, the painting was not obedient. It was twisting and turning, unwilling to calm down. Elder Dong Shu revealed a strenuous expression. His method was neither good nor bad. He could subdue one person in a short time, but it was difficult to deal with another. If he was hit by someone, it was possible that the captive would escape. Fearing that another person would come out to fight with him, he pressed his chest and turned around to run back. As long as he returned to the original place, even if he broke free, it would not be difficult to subdue him with a group of blood subordinates by his side. When he returned to his original spot, he could no longer suppress it and let the ancient demon out. Jiang Wu said, "Capture him, and we can find out his background." As soon as he finished speaking, an air shield fell and trapped him in it. But at this moment, the ancient demon suddenly turned black, and in the blink of an eye, he turned into a pile of ashes. Feng Li bent down to pick up some ashes and looked at them. After straightening up, she shook her head at the crowd. Obviously, she could not find any clues from them. At this moment, the ancient demon was obviously at a disadvantage. Just now, when there were two of them fighting against Wenfeng Qiao, he was still a little weaker. Now there was only one left, and he was even less of a match. In a moment, his limbs were broken, but he seemed to have a method of immortality, and it would not take long for him to grow back. But with the consumption of his primordial qi, the speed of recovery was much slower than before. But in the eyes of outsiders, the difference was not big, and they only saw the difficulty in dealing with him. Jiang Wu said, "Can you identify the origin of the bloodline of these two people?" The people beside him said that they had never seen it before. When Jiang Wu saw this, he immediately said seriously, "Everyone should know that we are here to attack the believers of the demon god who may be hiding here. This person's origin is unknown, and his movements are suspicious. It is very likely that he is related to the demon god. If we leave him alone and let him guide the demon god into the world, how can you all live in peace?" When the people of the sects heard this, they all fell silent. They naturally understood this, but Jiang Wu was wrong on one point. The people of the 5 sects felt that since the higher palace of Distant Star placed so much importance on this matter, they must be even more anxious than they were. Then, with the higher palace at the front, why should they be anxious to stand up for themselves? It was better to preserve their own strength. Jiang Wu saw that everyone's expressions were indifferent, and it was obvious that not many people cared about this matter. He was both angry and helpless. At this moment, the situation suddenly changed. The ancient demon actually turned around and fled. Wenfeng's rainbow wings spread out behind her, and she immediately chased after it. But after entering the sea region ahead, her figure gradually faded, as if there was an invisible barrier there. After circling around, Wenfeng saw that she couldn't find the whereabouts of the ancient demon, so she could only fly back. Zhang Chan watched from below as she left, and he couldn't help but twitch his mouth. After obtaining the jade sand seed in the formation, they now had even more powerful methods, but their main goal now was to delay, so there was no need to use too much power. Killing this person wasn't difficult, but it wasn't very useful either. Instead, it would make the other party extremely vigilant, and they would send more people over. In a flash, Wenfeng returned to the big city that was carried by the deities and monsters. Jiang Wu asked, "Ask Elder Qiao. Where did that person go?" He asked Qiao, "There's something strange over there." Jiang Wu gave an order, and immediately, 2 fierce birds were released by a disciple. In a short moment they entered the sea region, but they didn't come out for a long time. He waited for a while before asking, "How is it?" That person respectfully replied, "This disciple can sense that the 2 beasts are still there, but they have lost their position, so it's difficult for them to come out." Jiang Wu thought about it and said, "Check again." That disciple obeyed, and consecutively released more than 100 fierce birds into the sea region, but in the end, they didn't come out. But in the end, they still managed to find out the general area that the formation covered. So, under Jiang Wu's order, the people of each sect split up and surrounded the sea region. At the same time, they also sent the deities and monsters into the sea and the sky, firmly clamping down on both sides. After the encirclement, Jiang Wu was slightly relieved, and said to Feng Li, "Elder Feng, your knowledge far surpasses ours, please go in and take a look." Feng Li saw that Wen Feng Qiao didn't encounter any danger just now, so she agreed. She went into the formation and circled around before coming back, saying, "There's something very strange about this place. It seems like they used a deity and monster to set up a maze barrier." There were many such deities and monsters in the void, and the most famous one was E2. He never took the initiative to attack others, but he could cause chaos in the entire heaven and earth. Even blood descendants like them couldn't escape once they were trapped inside, and could only die. They had never seen a formation before, so they suspected that these people, who were suspected to be followers of the Fiend Celestial, used something similar. Feng Li said, "Since we can't find the entrance, then we'll attack by force, but I don't believe it." Everyone agreed that to break the illusory barrier, this method was usually the most effective. An elder of the blood sect stood up and said, "Leave this to me." He stood in front and activated his bloodline secret technique. Very soon, an astonishing scene appeared. They saw two giant hairy hands suddenly stretching down from the sky. They were so huge that they seemed to connect heaven and earth. Moreover, no one knew where they came from, and no one knew what was hidden behind them. Just a little thought was enough to make people feel abnormally terrified. The two hands clenched into fists, and smashed straight down towards the sea region. Everyone's expression was solemn, and they were ready to receive the impact. But what was surprising was that when the two fists hit, it was as if they had punched into a misty swamp, and there was no response at all. Jiang Wu unconsciously frowned. He could feel the shocking power contained in the fists. Under this blow, even if it was a mountain or land, it would be brazenly smashed, but it couldn't do anything to this small sea region. He was afraid that it was not as simple as he thought, and he had to re-examine it. Seeing this, Zhang Quan laughed a few times. Although this formation was not very profound, it had its own ingenuity, and there was a way to shift and return inside. If one couldn't find the correct method, then it would be impossible to enter by relying on brute force, unless the person who attacked had the ability to break it in one blow. This formation was attached to a magic tool that Bushutian had brought here, and it was not easy to destroy. The only concern was that after these two punches, the jade sand seeds that were previously buried had been used up a lot. He was afraid that if this kind of attack continued a few more times, it would not last for long. So he was considering whether to use his own Fa Li to maintain it if necessary. In the next 2 to 3 days, the people of the various sects used different methods to test the changes in the formation, and repeatedly attacked the formation, but it did not have much effect. Jiang Wu did not know that Zhang Chan's jade sand seeds were also almost used up, and he was also unusually anxious. Besides the Li Ming blood sect, the other 5 sects did not contribute much. But this time, he was more or less certain that the other side had something to do with the demon god, so in the name of the 6 sects and all the elders present, he once again asked for help from the upper palace. But at the same time, he did not stop, and arranged for people to continue attacking this sea region. But every time the sky gradually darkened, they would retreat. This wasn't because they were tired, but because with so many people fighting at night, the energy of their bloodline that was stimulated was extremely easy to draw over a type of monster called Ancient Zhou from the void. Another 2 days passed, and in the formation, a cold wind swept and Sima Quan appeared. Before he could greet the people, he shook his sleeve, and another 5 boats of jade sand seeds appeared. Zhang Chan's eyes lit up, and he laughed loudly, "Fellow Sima, these things were delivered at the right time." As early as 3 days ago, the jade sand seeds had been used up, and these few days, they had used up a lot of the precious pills they brought with them by using their own Fa Li. However, Sima Quan said in a deep voice, "Everyone, don't be too happy. I found out that those people are requesting reinforcements from the so-called distant star upper palace. I'm afraid that reinforcements will arrive very soon, and this time, I'm afraid that they will truly take us seriously. At that time, the formation outside will no longer be able to withstand them." Fellow Taoists, you must prepare early, for a true battle to the death will follow. Chapter 1831. In the depths of the void, tens of thousands of big and small star cities were gathered in one place, connected by ropeways. Around them, ferocious birds that looked like suns with blazing flames were flying around, adding radiance to the city. In the middle of the stars, on the top of the 10,000 holy tower, a wisp of yang fire suddenly lit up. Then, countless lantern-like gods and monsters gathered and revolved around the big tower, illuminating the other side. From near to far, layers of ripples spread out, as if they were extending out endlessly. At this moment, the deep void was as bright as day. In the big tower, on the semicircular seats, there were a total of 19 people who looked like gods and monsters. Each of them had a huge body, and their appearance was strange and ferocious. It could be seen that there were strands of star-like mist rising from the top of their heads, straight into the depths of the void. The power of the remote star palace for the past thousands of years was all in the hands of these 19 people. The cultivation of this generation was far superior to the elders and sect masters of the other realms. They were not gods and monsters, but still descendants of human blood. They just cultivated here, and this appearance was more convenient for them to absorb the essence of the netherworld from the void. This thing was the origin of all gods and monsters, the source of their power. Just now, only when one reached their level and was immersed in this place for a long time could they truly feel it. At this moment, a monster with a head of long hair and beard that covered its entire face suddenly moved. A single vertical eye appeared in the middle of its face that was covered, and it emitted a wisp of pale white light. His name was Yumuli, and the bloodline in his body came from the god and monster Kongwei. Anyone who got his hair and beard, when necessary, could establish a telepathic technique with him by burning it. He could even see some of the scenes that the person who sent the message saw. Just now, he received a piece of important news. He looked at the elders around him and said in a hoarse voice, Jiang Wu sent a message. The place where he went, he saw people who are suspected to be followers of the demon god. After one of the elders heard it, he said, since I issued the order, I have checked hundreds of realms, including the ones under the jurisdiction of the remote star palace. In the end, none of the suspected demon god is real. Can we confirm it this time? Yumuli said, Elder Zhang's report is very likely to be true. At this point, he spoke with a slightly heavier tone, including Elder Zhang, I have 4 elders who have arrived. This force, along with the 6 great sects of the Qiong continent, can't even find a trace of the enemy. Moreover, the bloodlines of those who are fighting are also extremely strange. It's impossible to identify what kind of monster they are. There's definitely a big problem here. Jiang Wu knew that the 6 great sects were unreliable, so in order to attract the attention of the distant star palace, he naturally exaggerated the situation a little. It wasn't wrong to say that the 6 sects had attacked together. At least the 6 sects had contributed. Another elder on the seat said, You're right. This power definitely didn't appear out of nowhere. However, if it's the work of the demon god, it wouldn't be difficult for him to make his followers gain great power in a short period of time. Perhaps these people were sent here by the demon god. All the elders were shocked, and there was a moment of silence. After a while, someone said, Do we need to ask the Mother of the Void about this? All the strange creatures in the world and all their power came from the void. And these strange creatures believed that there was a supreme existence in the depths of the void. They called it the Mother of the Void. They believed that this was where all things belonged, where all forms and forms were placed. No one knew whether this person truly existed or not, but at their level of bloodline, they were able to rely on a type of ritual to ask the void, and from there, obtain answers related to certain matters, or request certain things. But now that this suggestion was made, there was a sound of objection from the crowd. This suggestion is not appropriate. Just now, we've asked once several months ago. The treasures sacrificed this time took up more than half of the palace's savings. There really isn't much left. The sacrificial items are secondary. Even the simplest ritual requires at least 10 days of preparation. If we delay, and the demon god's followers are left unobstructed, this person may very well bring the demon god into the world during this period of time. Elder Jiang has always been cautious. In my opinion, there's no need to investigate anymore. Regardless of whether the demon god's followers are here or not, since they're suspicious, we should just destroy them. What's the point of investigating? That's easy for you to say. What if this is the demon god's arrangement to lure us in and then cause trouble elsewhere? How are we going to stop it then? Do you think we can just sit here and do nothing? All the elders present expressed their own opinions. Some agreed, some disagreed, and some were too radical to care about the consequences. However, the few people who were usually more prestigious didn't say anything. Therefore, after half a day, there was still no accurate result. Just as everyone was arguing, a guarding disciple suddenly ran in from the outside with a panicked expression. An elder nearby turned around and asked condescendingly, "What's the matter?" The disciple knelt on the ground and said with fear and trepidation, "Elder, the longevity fire has weakened a lot. Look, look." He swallowed a mouthful of saliva and said, "It looks like it's going to be extinguished." What? The slightly chaotic discussions in the hall immediately quieted down. Everyone revealed a shocked expression. No matter how powerful the demon god was in the world, there would be a day when its life would end. What's more, blood descendants like them wouldn't increase their lifespan by much even if they returned to their ancestral bodies. Besides, some demon gods in the world weren't famous for their longevity. The longevity fire was a divine object that gathered the power of various sects in various worlds and sacrificed countless good things to obtain from the Void Mother. It could be said to be the object of their sustenance and life. As long as the fire was lit, they could live forever. If it was extinguished, they could only rely on their own lifespan to resist the corrosion of the cycle of life and death. It wasn't easy to worship this object. Many heavenly treasures had to be put in at every moment, and a large number of demon gods had to be sacrificed every once in a while to maintain its brilliance. However, since a while ago, the fire had become weaker. No matter what method they used, even if they doubled the offerings, it was useless. In the end, regardless of the cost, they made another sacrifice to the Void Mother. Only then did they know that a void demon god was about to arrive. Not only was the longevity fire related to their lives, it was also closely related to the origin of the void. Once a demon god descended, the myriad worlds would be shaken and fall. If the origin was lost, the longevity fire would cease to exist. It was also because of this that the people of the distant Star Palace attached great importance to this matter. Now, the longevity fire was showing signs of abnormality once again. Only a demon god could cause such an effect. Perhaps this was a sign that he was about to descend. Sitting in the middle of the crowd was a half-dragon, half-beast demon god. This was Elder Yanzhu. He was quite popular here and was also the oldest. He opened his mouth and said, "Everyone, please listen to me." The hall immediately fell silent. Yanzhu said, "Let's not talk about anything else. First, we need to sacrifice demon gods to maintain the longevity fire. After all, this concerns our lives." All the elders nodded in agreement. However, they all knew that this was just for peace of mind. If a truly unstoppable force arrived, then this action would be meaningless. After Yanzhu arranged this matter in front of all the elders, he said, "I believe that the news Elder Jiang sent back is not false. Otherwise, the longevity fire would not be showing signs of abnormality at this time." At this point, he turned to the side. A few elders said that they were afraid of demon gods appearing elsewhere and that they would not be able to react in time. This is somewhat reasonable. How about this? The palace cannot be left unguarded. Leave 9 people here, and the rest will go and help Elder Jiang. At the same time, use the star writ to summon the remaining elders to the palace. When they see any abnormality, they can immediately go and deal with it. The remote star upper realm had dozens of upper realms. Apart from them, there were more than 100 elders. Of course, most of these people were the sect masters of the various large sections. Under normal circumstances, it was impossible for them to gather in one place. However, every 100 years, the remote star upper realm had the authority to issue a star writ. As long as they were elders of the palace, no matter what important matter they had to attend to, once they received this writ, they would have to come to the palace to pay their respects. The elders discussed for a while, and under the premise that there was no better way, they all agreed to this idea. Thus, the 10 elders, including Yen Zhu and Yu Muli, decided to go to the Xiong continent to avoid wasting time. In the void, several large monsters woke up. This was the demon god Void Melt. It had the ability to transfer living beings. The elders of the remote star upper realm could borrow its power and send people to any of the lower realms under their jurisdiction. However, it would take a few days each time, and they couldn't borrow its power to return, so it was even more troublesome. They had to pass through the cracks in the void by themselves. Not only did they have to inevitably collide with many demon gods, but it also took a long time. This was also the reason why some of the elders were more conservative. As long as there was a problem in another place, the people who were sent to another place wouldn't be able to return in time. On the Xiong continent, the golden crow retreated, and the light of day dimmed. Another day had passed. The people of the various sects couldn't find a way to break the formation, so they returned empty-handed. Zhang Quan relaxed slightly. He came to the front of the spell altar. These few days, he had built up quite a lot of things, and it was getting closer and closer to the last day. However, he didn't forget Sima Quan's reminder. If they wanted to make it through, it seemed like they would have to go through a tough battle. Hua Yingling came to stand beside him and said, "There hasn't been any more help coming these few days. If the people of the remote star upper realm come, we might have to rely on ourselves to defend." Zhang Quan said, "Jinren Hua, how many jade gravel seeds are left now?" Hua Yingling said, "According to the current situation, there is still enough to last for 5 days. However, if the other side has more help, we might only be able to last for 1 or 2 days. Although Jinren Sima is going to look for more, there is a limited number of jade gravel seeds here, so they might not be able to be delivered in time." Zhang Quan said decisively, "We don't have to worry about these jade gravel seeds anymore. We will try our best to maintain our mana. Even after we break the formation, we will still have the strength to fight with them." Hua Yingling nodded. This was undoubtedly the right choice. The night passed quickly. When the sun rose, according to common sense, the other side would begin to attack the formation. However, this time was different from the past. The invading enemy was silent. Zhang Quan suddenly realized that something might happen today. Sure enough, when it was close to noon, a series of ripples came from the atmosphere, and then the entire sky was torn apart with a loud bang. Then, a large city that covered the entire land in a layer of shadow appeared there. Chapter 1832. Beneath the Dragon Sect's sea region, the fallen deity that was originally lying dormant under the sea and intercepting all living beings that passed by was now dying. Above its huge body, there was a gust of yin qi. If there were cultivators from the Inata temple here, they would be able to see that there was a great demon of similar size lying on its body, continuously eroding its spirit. Not long after, this half-dragon, half-tortoise deity was completely lifeless. The great demon's shadow also slowly dissipated. Then, the yin qi gathered, and Sima Quan's figure appeared. He examined himself and muttered, "Looks like I'm still lacking a little." Because the reinforcements from the distant Star Palace were about to arrive, along with the people from the original 6 sects, they would definitely gather an unprecedentedly strong force. He felt that with the current strength in the formation, if there was no obvious improvement or change, it would be difficult to defend. Even if there were enough jade sand, the formation had its limit. Therefore, he thought carefully and felt that only by becoming a genuine demon, he would have the confidence to fight against it just now. Moreover, after he succeeded, Bush Tian could still send cultivators of the same realm over. That would greatly increase his chances of winning. Due to the sufficient amount of external medicine, he had almost reached the point where he was on the verge of breaking through before he entered the world. Moreover, the body of this falling breath was like a mountain. It had been suppressed here for a long time, so its spirit was considered tough. It was the perfect resource for him to improve his cultivation. However, after swallowing this deity, he realized that it was still not enough to increase his cultivation to a higher level. If he forced it, there was a possibility of failure. Sky demons were not like cultivators. Although failure would not be a big problem, they would lose more yin qi and their own essence. It was not easy to replenish spiritual vigor here. If he failed, it would be difficult for him to have another chance in a short period of time. Moreover, if he was not at the altar, it would be even more difficult to resist. Therefore, it was best to succeed in one go. After he made up his mind, he turned around and flew into the sky. He decided to wait for the people from the dragon sect here. The fallen deity was used by the dragon sect to guard the sea region. The death of this deity would definitely alarm the entire sect. Once the sect elders came to check, it would be a good time to kill it as well to make up for the last gap. However, perhaps it was because the dragon sect was particularly at ease with this monster, or perhaps it was because they did not leave any traces on its body, but after waiting for a long time, he did not see any reaction from the other party. Because of this, he considered it for a moment. No matter what the dragon sect's reaction was, this place was no longer suitable for him to continue waiting. With this amount of time, he could have gone to other realms to search for other targets. Moreover, the situation at the altar could change at any time, and he couldn't afford to delay any longer. Thinking of this, he turned his gaze to Dragon's Pine Ridge, where there was a suitable target. His figure suddenly turned into a gust of yin wind and soon appeared on the greenish-gray mountain ridge. Then, he sank down and went straight into the depths. Dragon's Pine Mountain not only delineated the dragon sect's territory, but there was also a huge creature hidden under the mountain. However, other than people at his level who were extremely sensitive to auras, most people would not be able to sense it. As he continued to sink, he soon reached the bottom of the sea. It could be seen that there was a monster that was even larger than the breath pendant suppressed at the bottom of the mountain. Its shape was somewhat similar to that of a flood dragon, but it had no horns, no claws, and no scales on its body. He leaped forward and instantly entered the body of this thing. After turning around, he discovered that it was actually a carrier, and its body could hold hundreds of thousands of people. He guessed that this thing might be used by the dragon sect to travel through the void. It was very likely that he could awaken this creature at a critical moment and carry the disciples of the sect to other realms. After sensing it for a while, he discovered that the spirit of this monster was not very powerful, but it was enough to fill the gap in his advancement. Thus, he did not hesitate much and immediately attacked it. This monster had been asleep for a long time, and in addition, it might have been set up by the people of the dragon sect, so its spirit was seized by him almost without any resistance. At this moment, he had enough resources. With a teleportation, he sank deep into the ground. Then, he slowly circulated his energy. In less than half a day, he had silently formed the Xian Yin Sky Devil body. Thus, he had stepped into the upper realm. Qi Dao cultivators had become mortal, and their aura was restrained. Usually, it would not cause any noise. Moreover, he had the body of a heavenly demon, and it was even more so when he did sinister things. He took out a jade scroll from his sleeve and carefully looked at it. It recorded some of the techniques of the Nether Spring sect. Although he had a demon body, he was still a cultivator in essence, and there was still a difference between him and a real demon. In battle, not only would he use the abilities that a demon had, but he would also use the techniques that a cultivator should have. This way, he could add more tricks to his arsenal. After looking for a while, he memorized all the things that were useful to him. Then, without further delay, he immediately flew out of the sea. At this moment, when he looked up, he saw that there was a huge city in the sky, almost covering the entire Xiong continent. His heart trembled slightly, and he immediately knew that the people of the distant Star Palace had arrived. He hurriedly used his magic power, and in an instant, a cold wind blew, and he sped towards the sea where the altar was. In Busu Tian, Zhang Yan suddenly felt something. As his understanding of the world increased, he could see more and more things. Just now, the movement of aura showed that Sima Quan had achieved great success. He nodded slightly. Previously, when he sent the ancient demons, the people behind him had caused trouble there several times. Therefore, there weren't many who could actually reach there, and even if there were one or two more, it wouldn't change the situation much. Only when someone reached the level of mortal metamorphosis could they control the overall situation. Now that he had arrived, he naturally wouldn't hesitate and immediately called out, "Where is Peng Xiang?" His Highness's shadow flashed, and Peng Xiang was already there. He respectfully bowed to him, and said, "May I know what instructions the Lord has for me to come here?" Zhang Yan flicked his finger, and instantly, a wave of consciousness entered Peng Xiang's demon body. He said, "Once you go to this world, help the cultivators who arrived there build the altar, and then bring my clone down. There are natives there who have some skills, and I'll give you another treasure." As he spoke, he lightly waved his sleeve, and a golden light appeared out of nowhere. In an instant, it condensed into a jade plate. Spiritual chi floated in the air, and brilliant light shone in all directions. Peng Xiang stretched his hand forward, and the treasure immediately fell into his hand. With a thought, he already knew how to use it, and he immediately put it away. Zhang Yan saw that he was ready, and with a thought, he sent Peng Xiang over to the world. Xiong Lu. Within the array, Zhang Chan stared at the giant city in the sky, and said, "Wow, this is really a big scene." Huang Ling also looked at the sky, and said, "Such a big instrument, there must be a lot of deities and blood descendants." Zhang Chan chuckled, and said, "In terms of numbers, I've never been afraid of anyone." Just at this moment they suddenly saw a large bird fly down from the giant city. There were quite a few people standing on the bird, and when they arrived in the sky above the sea, one of them suddenly stood up. One of its eyes opened, and in an instant, a ray of light shot down. At this moment, all the cultivators on the island had a feeling that there was no cover in front of them, and their hiding place was exposed to this person's eyes. Huang Ling's expression froze, and said, "Chan Jinren, this person has the eye of truth, and seems to be able to see into the array." Zhang Chan was slightly surprised, and turned to look, and said, "So this person can also see the altar?" Huang Ling nodded, and said, "Maybe not completely, but as long as there are some traces, it is not hard to guess the truth." On the giant bird, Hua Zhu saw that Yu Muley had retracted his gaze, and asked, "Elder Yu, how is it? What did you see?" Yu Muley said, "That place is too covered up, and I cannot see exactly how many people are there. However, I can see something that looks like an altar, but I don't know if it is completed yet." With a serious expression, he said, "Elders, we came to the right place. That should be used as a sacrifice to the demon god." Hearing this, all the elders of Distant Stars sect who were standing there felt their hearts tremble for a moment. The demon god had the power to destroy the heavens. Even if he had not truly descended, and they were only facing his followers, they felt their hearts sink, and an oppressive atmosphere instantly spread out. After a while, an elder said irritatedly, "No matter what, we must destroy it today." Once he said this, the elders just now came back to their senses, and they all voiced their agreement. This matter was related to the rise and fall of the flame of longevity, and also their lives. No matter what, they could not allow the demon god's followers to act recklessly and destroy their own foundation. Hua Zhu comforted everyone, and asked again, "Elder Yu, can you break the illusion in front of us?" Yu Muley shook his head, and said, "This is not an illusion, but some kind of brilliant technique that uses the power of heaven and earth. However, even though I do not know how to break it, the amount of pressure it can withstand is definitely limited. As long as we attack together, we will definitely be able to destroy this obstacle." Hua Zhu asked, and said, "Have the elders of the 6 sects arrived?" The person below replied, "The people of the various sects are already on the way, and they will arrive at the latest." This time, they forcefully summoned the people of the various sections. Whether they were willing or not, they had to come. It was also because of this that no one noticed Sima Quan swallowing the divine souls of the 2 dragon sect monsters consecutively, because the people who were qualified to know about this matter were currently not in the sections. At this moment, Jiang Wu stood out and said, "Elders, I think we cannot stop attacking now. These days, every time we attack this place together, the sea below will distort and shatter, so it is clear that this is effective. At the very least, it can prevent this person from calmly constructing the altar. Hua Zhu thought about it seriously, and said, "That makes sense." He gave the order, and the huge city that covered the sky shook. Then, there was the sound of dense flapping of wings. Thousands of winged, four-legged, three-eyed monsters flew down from the city, and rushed straight down to the sea below. Seeing this, Zhang Chan snorted. If these monsters rushed into the formation, it would definitely speed up the consumption of the jade sand, and he would not allow it to be wasted on these monsters, so he did not hold back anymore. He opened his sleeves, and released all the golden insects that he had painstakingly nurtured these days, and drove them into the sky. You're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.